You got your, give me a phone. You finish your last exam.
That's
today.
it. I'm done.
Thank goodness. Now you can go how your mother ordered and present.
I did.
Yeah. See the video is blurry.
What's going on?
So you don't get your shots. You
I
done?
already had one.
Yeah, you just won.
One more. I have a month.
Okay. The son had this yesterday. The second. And he said, you know, that is fine. A little.
They don't have to. It wasn't too bad. Because my dad had an advisor in the second one. He said he thought he was gonna have all some, and he didn't get it. Yeah. I need to- I don't know what that is.
But it shows you why you work on it. Positive.
Oh, can't wait to get done.
Oh, big relief. They had articles about what we people are not going back to. You know, he started. I'm like 40%.
The problem is, that's too.
That's where the
How are you?
That's fine.
Thank you. How are you?
And so they blew it out.
Yeah,
How's it going?
Okay, how are you?
You're good?
Good.
Well, I gave up on that.
Somehow
I
that's.
think it's pretty substantial.
I mean, I understand you had the opportunity to get the vaccine.
Right.
Question.
Here's my opinion. I just said them back there. Well, actually, we have plexiglass. I don't know.
It's interesting that if the year progresses, whether like renew your driver's license, will that be a condition?
Right, because it would go back to the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You better if they did make it go back.
Where they say,
Because that's what I did when I got my regular license. They just mailed it to me.
they might say, one of both first. Might see kind of restriction.
Then incentivizes people to get it.
Yeah, so one area. Yeah, I went to Edison. That's my-
Trying that.
Perfect.
I just don't want to.
Okay. During the report.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes. Perfect.
All right.
Oh, for sure.
I'm good.
You are
Sure.
behind plexiglass? Oh, good.
Are we all good?
Well, we're behind plexiglass.
We're all vaccinated.
We're vaccinated.
Jesse, can you hear me?
As long as that's being.
We gotta start something.
Good evening, Millburn Township. Where am I? In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and electronically forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall and remotely at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, May 4th, 2021. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Miss Miggins,
Here.
Miss Fall Eglo,
Here.
Mr. Wasserman,
Here.
Mr. Vinayak,
Here.
Mayor Prupus.
Here.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So
Motion.
moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the February 9th, 2021 Township Committee minutes?
So moved. Oh.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the February 9th, 2021 Special Township Committee minutes?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Good evening, Millburn Township. On May 23rd, the DPW redevelopment subcommittee met. Planning Board Chair Beth Zoll and Alex McDonald are working on a public engagement plan that they will share with the subcommittee. And then we will share with all of you. And Jorge Mastro Pietro and Alex are working to help the DPW assess its current and future needs. The sign ordinance review subcommittee met yesterday, May 3rd, and we are working on a community survey. Our next meeting will be in 2 weeks. The Taylor Park Entrance Revitalization Subcommittee is working on the scope for an RFP for a landscape architect, and our next meeting is tomorrow at 10 a.m. And the two-way traffic investigation subcommittee will meet on May 7th to review the traffic report that we're planning to present to the Township Committee on June 6th. The food pantry would benefit from the following items as we're running a little low: canned soup, mayo, plastic only, no glass, laundry detergent, and shelf milk in all varieties. And donations can be dropped off at Millburn Town Hall, Green Nectar Market during regular business hours, or 15 Cypress Street in Millburn at any time. And then I'd also just like to share that the Millburn Short Hills Desi Club is doing a relief donation drive for COVID-19 in India. They're looking to raise $50,000. I saw today that they did raise $10,000 that they got out to one organization. They're partnering with larger organizations that are doing the work there. And if you'd like to make a contribution, you can Zelle Emma Millburn Short Hills Desi Club at gmail.com or Venmo Nirja-Mishra. And just reach out to me in an email if you want to be connected to that relief donation drive and didn't get the information. All right, my report is complete. Committeewoman Eglo.
Hi, thank you. So I was very pleased with our initial Taylor Park meeting, and I'm looking forward to this meeting tomorrow. And all of us gave our top 5 hit ideas to Mr. Molman, so we'll review that together as a group. So that's good. And Shade Tree met, and example of something I didn't know. So I have a tree on my front yard, which is diseased and has to come down. So a tree, if it's more than 10 inches, you have to get permission from Shade Tree, but even though it's on your property, unless it's diseased. So because there were some rules we didn't understand, Tom Doty asked that the town send out the shade tree ordinance so people in town can understand the rules and regulations about removing trees and what that entails. So that's really important that you look that up on the website before you remove a tree from your property. And that's it for now. Thank you.
Megan?
Megan's today. Thank you. We had a meeting with the subcommittee for zoning, and we continue to work very diligently on this. It is big code, and so we're taking it piecemeal, pieces at a time. And we will be able to report back when we have more information for you, but a lot of work, a lot of hands. It's moving along beautifully. Thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Deputy Mayor Wasserman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to add in that Committeewoman Miggins and I attended a wonderful St. Rose of Lima Troop 17 Boy Scout Award ceremony where they inaugurated 8 Eagle Scouts, as part of the new Eagle Scouts, and these kids worked really hard. Andrew Bissig, I'm probably going to screw up some of the names, so pardon me. Tanish Tayagi, Daniel Gertis, Owen Kasman, Drew Ponde, Vincent Wong, Lucas Davis, and Nicholas Starres. And these kids worked, did a lot of work in the community, and I could say that we're very proud of them. They did a lot of great work, and congratulations to them. Also, for this coming Saturday, May 8th, we hope that you join us for some fame. So we have a whole day planned. We have a whole day planned of great events for Mother's Day. So if your mom is local, or if you want to have some fun, we have free fitness classes in the morning. We have great things for kids. We have some roaming family entertainers, and this is all sponsored by Explore Millburn. And so I really want to invite everybody to join us, and there's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of great fun to be had. And with that, Mayor, I wonder, we're very excited to invite Steve Brillo, to our new executive director, to maybe say a few things. He just started, and I do want to welcome Steve. He's a real professional. He has a lot of great experience, and he's really going to support our businesses and apply for grants and do a lot of great things. So Steve, are you with us?
I am. How is everyone this evening? Thank you so much, Mayor and members of the committee, for having me. As the committee members said, we have a big event coming up on Saturday. We are really thrilled for this Mother's Day event, which we've called Fame. We're going to have over a dozen local not-for-profit groups that are going to be out meeting with local residents. We're going to have a number of health and wellness activities ranging from yoga to dance to other services. And so we're also coordinating with a lot of local businesses. I believe at this point we have 20 or 21 local businesses who'll be offering specials related to that event. So we hope that there's some great foot traffic that's generated from the event, which will be held at Taylor Park, and then that those folks go on to shop in the businesses that have so graciously donated their time and their wares. And so thrilled with that, and certainly looking forward to working with what I think is just an absolutely incredible team on this board. There's a great vision, there's great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to playing the role of organizing all of that and assisting in getting that vision completed.
Thank you so much, Steve. And just so everybody knows, all the businesses know, Steve, you are sitting in town hall. You have regular business hours. You're here during the week. And how can people reach you if people have a question or businesses have a question?
Sure. So I'm out quite a bit. That's my job, is to go out and meet with folks and try to bring our services to them. We're actually next week going to be rolling out some information about the new federal program that's designed to assist restaurants and bars with the federal recovery from COVID. So I'll be knocking on a lot of doors next week, spreading that information on behalf of Explore Millburn. But also, yeah, I'm in the office 8:30 to 4:30 every day. You can call Borough Hall or Town Hall, and they will connect you to me, and then certainly via email. My email is pretty simple. It's steve@exploremillburnshorthills.org.
Terrific. Steve, welcome aboard and thanks so much.
Thank you.
Short Hills
Enjoy
is
your evening,
spelled out.
everyone.
Short Hills is spelled out.
It is, yes. So it's so just for everybody, it's explore millburnshorthills.org.
And that concludes my report.
Great, thank you. And Committeeman Benyaya?
Thank you, Mayor. So Committeewoman Meggins and I actually went and took a tour of the facility, Leaf Compost facility, where the Verizon tower was discussed, to take a look to see what can be done. One of the thought process that I actually proposed last time as well, we are field poor town, so can we put a field out there? And it's about 13-acre space with 6 acre of wetland and 5, or maybe it's 11, not 13, about 5.5 acre of land that we can work on. And it seems like a very good and big site. We want to explore what can be done there for a better use within the township. Then next is, I attended a joint committee meeting where these guys are discussing on putting lighting on the library field, the turf field. That project is about $275,000. Township has put forward $50,000 towards it. And I think they're probably going to get $50,000 from the joint field fees that they collect, and the rest of the money, they are going to go out and are looking for donation with chance of naming rights as well. So if anybody's out there looking to put their name on the field, have presence, they're welcome to reach out to the Rec Commission or reach out to the office here. It's a good opportunity to have your name in Millburn Township. And it's a couple $100,000 that we're looking for there. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Falcon?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mayor, you've asked me to give an update on the situation in Millburn Township with regard to affordable housing. I gather that people are wondering, where does all this come from? Why are we involved? What's our situation? I hope you'll forgive me for using some notes that prepared to come through this. Here's the background. Fencing in 1975. The Supreme Court of New Jersey decided cases finding that municipalities throughout the state had impermissibly thwarted the development of low and moderate income housing through the enactment of zoning requirements designed to foster the construction of more substantial and less expensive residential housing. These cases came to be known as the Mount Laurel Doctrine. Legislature.
Mr. Falcon, would you just go a little closer, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, sir.
I think it is it not?
Just tap on.
Ah,
Oh,
Ah.
sorry. Okay, well, I won't go back. These cases came to be known as the Mount Laurel Doctrine. The legislature subsequently adopted statutes and created administrative procedures designed to foster the development of low and moderate income housing. These laws dealt importantly with the implementation of the builder's remedy, which the court developed in response to what it regarded as an insufficient response to the original establishment of the Mount Laurel Doctrine. In short, if a municipality had failed to take actions designed to provide a reasonable opportunity for the development of low and moderate income housing, often measured in terms of target numbers, a process was created whereby a developer who was willing to construct a development which included low and moderate income housing would in return be allowed to develop a site to a higher number of units than would otherwise have been permitted under the municipality's then zoning, which was in effect. For many years, that system was administered by the Council on Affordable Housing, known as COA, which is why we often hear about COA housing as meaning low and moderate income housing. Toward the end of the Christie administration, POA became deadlocked administrative agency and was essentially defunct. The Supreme Court, observing that the administration of low and moderate income housing had become inoperable, rendered a decision whereby the court took back the administration of that process. A series of judges were specially designated to handle affordable housing cases with the assistance of special masters appointed by the courts to assist and advise the judges. Municipalities were given the opportunity to file lawsuits known as declaratory judgment cases, requesting a judicial determination of their affordable housing obligations. The special masters often engaged in mediation of these cases, in which the Fair Share Housing Center, an affordable housing advocacy organization, potential developers, the municipality, and other interested parties participated. Now, in the case of Millburn Township, the planning board developed and approved a housing element and fair share plan, which became a part of the master plan of the township. This plan was endorsed by the township committee, which actions took place in April 2000.
Just prior to the final adoption by Millburn of its plan, some organization filed a builder's remedy lawsuit against the township. Judge Gardner, the judge of the Superior Court to whom the case had been assigned, designated Mr. Frank Banish, a professional planner, to serve as the special master in connection with that case. Judge Gardner directed that a confidential.
Mr. Falcon, your mic is gone again.
Yeah, I don't think your mic is.
It's on.
It works now.
Well, you heard about the master plan, right?
Yes,
Right.
Okay.
got that.
Sorry to interrupt.
Mr. Banish resulted,
Oh, Mr. Falcon, can you come sit in Mr. McDonald's seat?
Sure.
And that way you'll have the microphone right there.
Okay, Judge Gardner directed that a confidential mediation take place presided over by Mr. Banish, which resulted in a settlement, the adoption of a zoning ordinance, and which affordable housing inclusionary project on Woodland Road is currently before the planning board. The declaratory judgment case was also referred to confidential mediation by Judge Gardner, which mediation is currently underway, with mediation sessions having been
Oh,
convened.
Mr. Falcon, use Mr. McDonald's microphone. That one keeps going out is the problem.
Yeah, maybe
We need a new mic.
battery.
Yes, probably.
Can you hear that?
That's okay.
3 is a trick. All right. The declaratory judgment case was also referred to confidential mediation by Judge Gardner, which mediation is currently underway, with mediation sessions having been convened by the special master for approximately the last year and a half. A development company, Woodmont Properties, sought to intervene to become a party in the litigation, but was twice been denied by Judge Gardner. Woodmont is under contract to purchase property along JFK Parkway in the New Jersey American Water Company's watershed property. Last week, a additional company, which owns, or rather has it under contract, the Annie Says property, also filed a motion seeking to intervene as a party in the case. That motion will be heard by Judge Gardner at a time which he determines. Without going into specifics, which I'm not at liberty to discuss by virtue of the confidentiality requirement imposed by Judge Gardner, I can report that the Township's steering committee has been hard at work, that Mr. Ed Buzak, the Township's Affordable Housing Special Counsel, who filed the declaratory judgment and has represented the Township in all associated proceedings, as well as the Township Planner, Paul Phillips, have been very actively engaged in this multifaceted, time-consuming, intense mediation. I was advised earlier today that Judge Gardner has extended the Township's immunity to May 31. Another mediation session has been scheduled by Mr. Banish for this Thursday, and the steering committee met today via a remote video conferencing platform to prepare for that session. Further reports on the progress of this effort will be made as they occur. When the mediation session ends, either in a settlement or in a trial, that conclusion will, of course, become public information. I hope that perhaps more than you needed to hear, but I wanted to give some of the background so people understood how this all unfolded, that the municipalities of the state have been brought into this process of providing a reasonable opportunity for low and moderate income housing.
Thank you, Mr. Falcon.
Can I ask one question? I do have one question, Mr. Falcon. In regards to the Woodmont, if you can answer this. So Woodmont is under contract to buy land in our watershed. This is the water that's provided for the 35 towns in this community, in our communities, over 200,000 people. And they're looking to build on that property. Is that what you said?
Yes, actually, it's the water company's watershed, but you're right, in a sense, it's the watershed of everyone who utilizes the water that comes out of there. Yes, they have proposed an inclusionary project on a portion of that property.
On the wetlands? Okay.
Yes,
Another question.
sure.
So like the woodland came into picture and then another Annie says you just mentioned came into picture. Can anyone come into this kind of negotiation if the builder is willing to build affordable housing?
Well, that's up to Judge Gardner applying standards that he utilizes. Thus far, he has not permitted Woodmont to intervene in the case,
Right, they've been
But he
denied
named-
twice
but-
and I heard that.
but he named them an interested party.
Okay.
So they did, their situation was discussed during one or two or maybe more of the mediation sessions. But as far as the new entrant is concerned, they also have to go before the judge to seek to participate. And what he will do about that, I couldn't speculate at this moment.
Thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Falcon, will that summary that you read from be available online for those who might have missed it? It's a
Well, I'll
very
have
good
to-
history.
It's all scratched up.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'll,
If clean it up and maybe we
can-
could have that
sure.
online. That's a really good background of everything,
Thank you. I
explanation.
will.
Thank you.
Mr. McDonald, would you
My
like to
turn?
give your report?
Sure. Just to follow up on Mr. Falcon's report and to Committeewoman Eglo's request, just like to make the public aware that we do have a portion of our website under our community that does outline the affordable housing situation in Millburn, as well as some timeline information, FAQs, things like that, that will be maybe of interest to those that are just joining in or may want to seek some additional information. Just want to update the committee and the public that we will be having a Memorial Day parade this year. We have reported on it in the past. We're encouraged by the increased outdoor capacity to 500 as of May 10th. And so looking forward to having a really robust and nice community celebration for Memorial Day. That parade will take place on Saturday. So more information will be placed on the website, save the date for those that are interested in watching.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. From the former Wells Fargo site to Taylor Park will be the parade route.
Up past, right on Whittingham.
That's correct. At the last township committee meeting, I was asked a question regarding the situation at 519 Millburn Avenue. And would like to provide that response and update to the township committee now at this time. As some may recall, depending on how long you've lived in township, 519 Millburn Avenue has been in operation as a restaurant or food use since the Glenwood Sweet Shop was in that location decades ago. It then became the Glenwood Diner, Tilly's, and now has been operating as Bacone South. When Bacone first began operating as a restaurant, it was conveyed to the township that they had purchased the business from Tilly's and were continuing to operate that business. At this point, the restaurant had already opened and was operating despite the specter of the global health crisis. Even though there was evidence of this space being a food use for decades, there was still an approval process that the restaurant had to pursue. This process was conveyed to the restaurant owner, and their attorney by former Mayor Lieberberg and myself. Bacone South would have to show that the restaurant was operating as a valid pre-existing non-conforming use, which would allow them to continue their operation upon board approval. This did not happen with the urgency anticipated. However, an initial application was received on October 6th and deemed incomplete. Subsequently, several other attempts to submit an application were made, and an initial date set before the Board of Adjustment was set for January 5th. Unfortunately, the application was deemed incomplete once again. On April 5th, Bacone was scheduled before the Board of Adjustment with a complete application, but the board attorney noticed discrepancies between their application and their noticing and decided that this item should not be heard at that time. Bacone has been advised that they should retain an attorney or planner that has experience in these matters. They have done so. In the meantime, they have been sent a notice of violation to provide a complete application for the Board of Adjustment's consideration by the end of May, and will be heard by the Board of Adjustment on June 7th, or be fined or potentially shuttered. In the interim, the township has received complaints about Bacone South's tables and chairs on the sidewalk. No sidewalk cafe license application had been received by the township. They were asked to remove the tables and chairs and have done so. This decision will not be reconsidered until such time that a complete application has been received and at least an initial hearing has proceeded before the Board of Adjustment. The township has shown a great deal of patience in light of the information we had been given and has been sensitive that a new viable business had chosen to open their doors in Millburn at the most difficult of times. That understanding will no longer be able to continue, and Bacone will have to be heard before the Board of Adjustment on June 7th. That concludes my reports.
Mr. Molman, any reports tonight? The committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda? No, anyone? Nope. Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on a consent agenda resolution item? If you would like to, please come to the podium and state your name and address and the exact resolution that you are referring to, please.
Good evening, everyone. Onyewolabi, 46 Maple Street in Millburn. So I wrote down some of my questions. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Yes. Okay. So I wrote down my questions because I know that I have time limitation and I don't have the actual number of the agenda. So just listen and you'll be able to figure it out. I was shocked when I found out that Mr. Maraziti Falcon got paid over $2 million over the past 7 years without any explanation as to what he did to get paid that much. So my question is, how does the Township Committee plan to resolve this? You know, because from the previous meeting, I know that you guys were talking about raising the cap. So it's one thing to raise the cap, but how do we resolve what has already happened? I believe that not fixing a problem as soon as it happened is a problem in itself. It's only right that the taxpayers, including myself, of Millburn know where their money is actually going. As a resident, I was floored when I learned this information. I just want to urge every Millburn resident tonight to be very vigilant. And if you can give an answer, I will appreciate it. My second question is regarding the civil rights resolution. I would really like to know where this came from, who wrote this, and what are you planning to do about it? More importantly, why is this happening now? Please give an answer if possible. My third question is, if any of you have any objections to the Millburn residents listening in to the hearing of the fair share housing. So I know there's a lot of questions in there. I can repeat it.
No, we're good.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld from 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. Regarding the bill list resolution 21-122, I think the public should know why originally the backup, which was traditionally put there, was not omitted and it only appeared on Monday when the document has shown has a date of April 26th. In addition, will we be receiving salary and wage, like updates to see what we're getting and sort of an amortization or what you're spent by appropriations? It's very important that we look at the breakout that we have. And first of all, I thank you because there's more detail on the summary that was attached on Monday. However, when you look at the municipal attorney's breakout, I'm not sure what month that goes to. I think it might be January because it says 121 on it. But when you look on his application, it shows you the amounts he's paid on the bare properties. But more importantly, I want to know, what did I do in the world of J. Edgar Hoover to be entitled to 2 line items on his bill? One for Oprah and one for a civil rights action. I filed a notice of tort action regarding civil rights violations. I've not filed any actions. And when you look at the amount, how much you spent responding to an Oprah request and to a civil rights notice, those sums are pretty outrageous. Also, there's a question regarding the bare properties litigation. When we had a case management conference, the judge asked a question whether Millburn was going to litigate or mediate. We've been notified that Millburn elected to litigate. Who made that decision? Was it elected officials or an unelected official made that decision? Regarding cooperative purchasing contract resolution 2124, I appreciate you're telling us what vendors will be subject to the cooperation contract, but I think we should have like an initial cap, maybe based on what we paid them last year, so we're allowed to monitor that going forward. After the civil rights resolution, where did this come from? Did it fall out of heaven? There's certain provisions. What happens if someone has a complaint against the BA? The way it's drafted, the BA is the guardsman, the gateskeeper. What independent vehicle do you have to monitor that? In addition, it says he's going to create a new form. What's the difference between a notice of tort claim form and what new kind of form that you'll need for this resolution? Regarding the Upton Affordable Housing Deed Restriction Resolution, based on what happened today, about 4:45, there's going to be an intense period of time where we need to settle for the fair share housing. One of the problems I've had is that the developer's agreement that's referred to in the resolution, you can't find off the website. And I think we need to look at that, because the real issue I think is going to be is when we're going to adopt a state best practices inventory inclusionary housing ordinance. It's been proposed by the state.
Thank you,
and it's
Mr.
by
Feld.
state things.
Thank you.
I'll be back.
Okay.
Jean Pasternak, 342 Hobart Ave. Some of the questions that I was going to ask have been covered, and I want to acknowledge Mr. Feld's questions because I agree with most of them. I'd just like to understand, I know I've filed Oprah requests, but my name's not on the bill list. So I'd like to understand why he was segregated out. I'd like my name to be there too. If you're going to name names, I'm happy to have mine on there too. I'd also like to ask, why don't we move, just as a follow-up to what Oyen had asked, why don't we hold money in escrow if there's an outstanding matter regarding unapproved monies paid? I think that makes a lot of sense, and it seems to be the prudent way to go. Then on 21-124, as far as the authorize a contract with certain approved state contractors, it doesn't seem to make sense that there are no amounts or there's no understanding of what those different contractors are doing. It would be helpful just to understand what work they're going to be doing if it's not obvious. And the amounts that you're projecting would be paid out so we can put in the context of the budget. The civil rights policy, that's 21-125. I agree. It does seem odd about the business administrator being the arbiter in case there would be a complaint raised about him. How would that be handled exactly? And I just wondered, the fact that it's coming up now, is this some kind of admission then that the public wasn't allowed to speak on agenda action items prior to official votes being taken by the township committee? Is that something that would have been covered had this policy been approved? Or when members were ordered out of the public meeting and escorted out by the police, is that something that would have been covered? Or when Committeeman Wasserman accused a member of the public of being dishonest when that person was raising good faith, the fact that the Main Street, New Jersey application was deficient because litigation regarding the SID was not disclosed. I think those are all fair questions to ask, and I'd like to understand how they would fit into this policy. And then on 21-126, the deed restriction, I'd just like to also understand why wouldn't that have been done at the time, in like, I guess, 2016 or 2017, when that project was completed and agreements were signed. It just seems off that it's being done now. Does that have something to do with the affordable housing litigation? Counting the units? I just don't understand where that came from all of a sudden. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice to see you back, Diane.
Thank you.
Nancy Stone, 10 Fielding Road in Short Hills. I'm commenting on 21-122, the bills list. Also want to back up why Jeff was singled out, which I think is great, that we get to see how much money is being spent on these things and how outrageous $7,000 for a notice of tort, which was not a legal action. Why that research had to be done, and 3,000, I think, in Oprah requests. Wow, that you should have in the computer and ready to print out. That information should be handy. But again, wasted taxpayer dollars, in my opinion, not necessary. But you should also single out other people who are suing the town and line item them as well, and not just single out Jeff. For example, we have the Beehive property, there's litigation there. The Woodmont property has litigation there. What else do we have going on? I know Mandelbaum just filed a lawsuit motion to intervene on the other end of town. So that's going to be costing a lot of money. I'd like to see the line items for all of those things as well. As far as the 21-125, the civil rights policy, I know my civil rights were violated on your first day, January 5th, when I was expressing my free speech. And because you didn't like what I had to say, I was asked to be removed, which quite frankly was kind of funny after the fact, but the officer chose not to do that wisely against your wishes. But I would like to know how that's going to protect the citizens who have the right to speak up in opposition to you, if we so choose to do that. So you need to be ready for that and handle that accordingly, because not everybody's going to agree with you, and you're going to have to face opposition in addition to things that are complementary. Also want to commend Alex for his report and explanation on the Bacone situation. Makes sense. I hope that carries forward and that gets rectified, because it would be terrible to have to deal with that situation at hand. But it was a good explanation. Let's see what happens.
Do you want to take on the phone? Hi, good evening. I'm sorry. Thank you. Good evening, Perry Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue in Short Hills. I'm calling tonight about the resolution 21-122. The line item for Falcone Mazzariti is also questioned. I also happen to be on that list. So when is the TC going to answer and explain to the public how the municipal attorney received payments over his retention cap through the 7 years? And why are we not starting an escrow for monies to recoup the excess of payments? You chose to litigate
not mediate. We were kind enough to extend the olive branch, and you chose the other way. And you want to use taxpayers' money, where you can certainly put that money to much better use. I'm in opposition of the SID, and we all know why. And you continually to use taxpayers' money to fund events and precisely what's going on. Alex mentioned Memorial Day Parade. Mr. Wasserman mentioned the FAME event. I'd like to ask both of those gentlemen, where are those events being held? I'll expect an answer sometime later. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Is that all the resolution consent agenda items? Would any of our committee members or professionals like to answer any questions that were raised during that public comment?
Yes, Mayor.
Great.
I would like to comment first on the civil rights resolution. I think I think to be clear that this resolution is not providing something that you didn't already have. What this is doing is this is spelling out that the township is committed to it, as well as that this is something that we have been asked to do through this resolution, through our joint insurance fund, to deal with our EPL POL policy with that fund, and the guidelines that are set forth in this resolution, are something that's required by us to help with our deductibles for the township, as well as provide an avenue of approach for those who may feel that they've been harassed or their rights have been violated or anything like that. Doesn't necessarily change that you've had those rights all along. Just to be clear on that.
Alex, can you just say those initials stood for?
I'm sorry,
Those
EPL.
initials?
Yeah, employment practice liability and public official liability. I would also like to comment on just in terms of the bills list. We've those bills have always been broken down in terms of kits bills. And so line items are generally chosen based on what litigation is ongoing, so that we can also, look at that and see what's happening. Mr. Feld is not the first person that has provided over requests that has been given a line item. So I just want that to be clear as well. This is not singling out Mr. Feld, but this is generally when we deal with a particular request consistently, that we make sure that that's tracked and followed in there. As far as the state contract vendors, again, this is we are required to make sure that the community knows what state contracts that we potentially may use, not that we will necessarily use them, and that what co-ops we are a part of, and what vendors that we may use, or that we've used in the past. But again, we may or may not use them depending on the needs of the municipality this year. But this resolution is required. That's all I can sort of speak to at this point here.
Mr. McDonald, can you speak to 21-126 in terms of just giving a little bit of a larger explanation to the
The
public?
deed restriction? I may defer to Mr. Falcon on that.
The deed restriction is being executed at the appropriate time in accordance with the process originally given to that project. This is the time for the execution. Preferred in any way, this is the time to do it.
Okay, and Mr. Falcon, can you just address Mrs. O'Walby's question about residents sitting in on mediation?
Yeah, very simply, Judge Gardner has directed that those mediations are confidential mediations. Matter of fact, even the written communications are labeled as confidential mediation related documents, and they're simply not open to the public pursuant to his direction.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they want to make on anything that was brought up during the, yes?
Yeah, I'll make one statement. Ms. Pasternak said that I called somebody dishonest, during the Main Street application. I never accused anybody of being dishonest. You can go back to the video and look at that. What I said is that the Main Street application was done in an honest and forthright manner. And it was something that a lot of thought was put in. That application, that designation would open the township up to a lot of grants, technical assistance, and it would be in our interest to have that designation. Now, there are certain members that don't think that's the case. There are certain members here that object to it, that have written to Trenton, that want to stop, the designation. It's not right. But I will tell you that there are 21 entities in New Jersey that are designated as with that designation, and 11 of them received $3 million last year, which goes towards bike lanes, green endeavors, a lot of things that would help the town. So, so that's what I was addressing. So I just wanted to clarify that.
I would like to add something. Mr. Feld, as an attorney, I don't know if you're retired, but attorneys charge money, period. Mrs. Pasternak, as a former Board of Ed member, I don't know if you finished your 2 terms, I'm not sure. The Board of Ed probably has a lot of legal fees. Oyen, you are a current Board of Ed member with another year to your term. Lawyers charge money and people do sue municipalities. People sue. It costs money. And I'm just going to say that, to keep inferring that there are misdeeds and nefarious things going on behind the scenes I'm just going to finish, it's
Excuse me, please, we're
Right.
disrupting the meeting by talking back and forth. Let's
right.
just-
I'm just going to say that, we trust our professionals and lawyers cost money. Okay, I'm just going to say that.
Thank you.
Yes,
I'll
Oh,
go after Mr.
No.
McDonald.
okay.
Mayor,
Mr.
sorry, I just
McDonald?
wanted to add 2 quick things.
Yes.
One is that a clarification that the Beehive lawsuit by Millburn Courtyards Associates is on that bill when it is expended upon, but it is being covered by the township's insurance company. Also, Memorial Day Parade has nothing to do with the Special Improvement District, and that is a township event.
Thank you.
Another question, if you guys can ask, I think there was something asked, who asked for mediation versus litigation? Bear property,
I can answer that.
please.
My partner, Andrew Brewer, attended the case management conference that told me that question had been raised. I spoke individually with members of the township committee to solicit.
Including me.
Yes.
Yes.
And me.
Their views with respect to that, and advise support accordingly.
Did you get any mediation recommendation from all 5 of the elected officials?
Well, no, it was unanimous.
Okay, so here is the answer. We all have chosen to go litigate. So what Mr. Falcon is doing is offering, or not offering, going ahead with what we have asked him or tasked him to do. Secondly, there's a lot of opposition to Mr. McDonald that has come up, and I wouldn't say a lot of, there are only a couple, 3 or 4 out of 20,000 residents. Again, with all due respect to his opinions, I work with him directly. And I support him wholeheartedly. I have not seen a person with so much passion working at his job with such a nice attitude. All I would say is don't get discouraged with a couple of opinions about you. I get this all the time where people will tell me I'm saying something wrong. But guess what? I'm elected and I'm going to do everything with passion with what I feel is right for the residents of the town as well. And I'm a taxpayer as well. So everything that these guys talk about, not these guys, some resident may oppose to, guess what, guys? All 5 township officials are also taxpayers, and equally or more or less, doesn't matter. And there are things that have been talked about, even tenants in the mode of rent. In my opinion, again, you all have your opinion, I have my opinion. I think they pay tax. in the form of rent. So again, to all, everyone has their thought process, everyone has their own perspective, and we'll all have to learn to agree to disagree. But thank you, Mr. McDonald, for working your ass off, with all due respect again. And thank you, Mr. Moments. You guys are doing a great job. Keep doing that job.
Thank you for saying that.
And I also agree. We spend a lot of hours together,
Mhm.
you know, in these meetings, and you really, Mr. McDonald puts a lot of effort towards his job and a lot of passion, which we appreciate.
No, there's a lot of room for improvement. That's always the case. What we are doing, what
No,
we're
you're
doing
perfect.
here,
Don't change.
10 years later, there will be someone else coming in, or 1 year later, someone else, newcomer will come in and say, I'm a newcomer too. I'm saying there are things that have not been done correctly. But again, these are all opinions. All I'm saying is you're doing the best of the job, and the attitude that you have towards work, please keep up the same attitude and don't get discouraged.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Okay, and with that, that was lovely. May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-1223 through resolution 21-133?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
A roll call vote.
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Saul Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'd like to refer Mr. Rossman to present ordinance 2573-21.
Thank you, Mayor. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2573-21, ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A colon 4445.14. I'll probably defer to Mr. Gaboff. Do you want to give a little background on this? You could probably do a better job than I could.
Sure, thank you. Good evening, thank you. So with regards to the ordinance to exceed the municipal cap rate, it does a couple things and be very clear that this does not mean we are exceeding the municipal cap. We are not. We are very far under that cap, which we talked about when we did the budget introduction. This sets up more about the future, as there are things that happen outside of the building that are outside of our control in terms of certain expenses that come down from the state that will sometimes put pressure on it, such as a number of years ago when they said you couldn't increase your expenses. They gave you a 0% cap, but then they hit you with pension increases and other increases that we have no control over. So this allows us and gives flexibility, if and only if necessary, in future years to make sure that we can meet the obligations of the town. So that is the purpose of doing the cap rate ordinance. And again, we're not even close to exceeding it this year. This is about setting up essentially an insurance policy for future years.
And is this a standard? Is this, is this something that other towns do?
Most towns, I can't speak for everybody, but my colleagues that I deal with, most of them will tell you it is good practice to do this to make sure that you have flexibility going forward. Again, I can't speak for all 565 municipalities, but most of us do it.
Let me add to that too. This is also because the case we have not increased our taxes. So based on that proportion,
Yes.
you have that appropriation as well. Now, you cannot increase appropriation without going through me.
Correct.
And
Correct.
this is not happening. But yes, I totally understand that we have to be ready. We can't just cut left, right, center without, when you come in pressure, it is more of a strategic way of doing it, just in case something happens.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is something that I will mention that you refer to, that the finance committee has gone over this in great detail.
Yes.
And the finance committee thinks that this is a smart
It's
thing.
the right thing to do.
The
yes.
right thing and the smart thing to do for the township.
And beyond that, we have always done this.
I think
I think there was 1 year where we didn't.
Mhm. And I would assume the auditor advises we do this.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I declare the hearing open. Does anybody want to make? Okay. Do you wanna move?
Anybody have any questions?
Just.
Oh,
Can you folks hear me?
you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really was a leftover. I couldn't hear a word Kit was saying, but it's too late at this point. Thank you. Sorry, I should have put my hand back down.
With that, I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on the final reading in accordance with the law.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Del Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus. Thank you.
The 2021 budget was introduced by the Township Committee at our April 6th, 2021 meeting. And may I have a motion to approve Resolution 21-134, which authorizes the township to read the 2021 municipal budget by title?
So moved.
I move that resolution 21-134 be approved.
I second the motion of resolution 21-134.
May I have a roll call vote?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Del Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
I offer to Mr. McDonald for any final comments on the proposed budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Still not working. Maybe I'll go back to my seat. Go back. Tonight is the time for the public hearing and final adoption of the 2020 municipal budget. We made a formal presentation at the introduction of the budget on April 6th. Directly following the April 6th Township Committee meeting, when the budget was introduced, all materials were posted to the Township website, including the introduced budget, user-friendly budget, and presentation. In that time, neither the Chief Financial Officer, Jason Gobloff, nor I have received any direct questions via email or phone call regarding the Township's 2021 budget. We are prepared to answer questions tonight from the Township Committee, as well as answer those questions that we are able to address during the following the public hearing. I just want to give a brief synopsis of the 2021 budget again for those that are kind of joining in at this point. There will be no increase in the municipal tax rate. Taxes will remain steady for 2021. The amount to be raised by taxation is $43,489,453. That is a total budget of $56,148,284. This number includes projected revenues and excludes the statutory library tax. We have decreased operating expenses by $456,501. The municipal tax portion on an average home in Millburn, which is approximately $1.2 million, will be $5,655.33. On average, over the past 5 years, the municipal tax rate has increased 0.5 cent each year. This shows a consistent and prudent financial approach by the township when it comes to financial practices. We are investing $1.5 million in capital projects this year. This is a correction from the introduction presentation where it was stated to be 1.4. The township will continue to take steps in 2021 and subsequent years to reduce costs with a focus on not impacting the level of service to our residents. We are pleased with the work of the Finance Subcommittee this year and all of our departments that work through the budget process. Myself and Jason Gabloff, Chief Financial Officer, are here to answer questions of the committee or following the public hearing. Thank you.
I hereby open the public hearing for any comments on the 2021 municipal budget.
Jeffrey Field, live in Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey. Few different questions. First question is a procedural question. When we introduced the budget, the SID budget was introduced prior to the calendar year budget. There's questions about the SID budget, which is included in the municipal budget. So I'm just trying to think if one has to be delayed because, or do we give our objections to the SID budget now because you're going to be voting on it? If you vote on it, does that mean you approve the allocation to the SID? I just want, that's a procedural question, how we should proceed with that. I just want to confirm that the BA just said that the capital budget is increasing $100,000 from what it was the introduced budget. I think that's
No,
right.
no. I had stated during the presentation that it was 1.4. In the budget document, it's 1.5.
All right, but I think it's 1.6. There's a question. All right. The first question, as to the snow budget, have we exceeded it that was projected in the budget that we're going to look at? We heard a gross sum of expenses being reduced. Will we have sort of an explanation of what those expenses are? April 1st was the deadline for filing commercial tax appeals. How many commercial tax appeals were filed that date? How much money has been reserved for these new commercial tax appeals? Interestingly, 2 of the tax appeals are involved in the group for the Birch group that was bought the package from Matt Cowley, but they're filing tax appeals for those properties or have been filed. Was the Magic Streetscape project included in the proposed calendar year 2021 capital improvement budget? Now, one of the questions I've been having, when you look at the user-friendly budget, we do not have any long-term debt. Everything is short-term rollover bond anticipation notes. What is the soft cost that we would save if we issued bonds rather than every year going out and roll overing these short-term debt? I don't know the answer to that, but it seems that we might be able to save some money that way if we issued debt, long-term debt. On your user-friendly budget, it shows that we do not have a bond rating. I don't know if that's correct. It's just. We have no bonds out. All right, so that's the answer. All right, because we go by short-term debt. One of the things about municipal budgeting, you don't accrue things. And at the presentation, we heard that last year we made up some of our shortfalls with FEMA money from a hurricane prior years. I think it was been said that we were entitled to CARE Act monies from last year, but does that appear on our balance sheet? And then also, based on the American Recovery Act, we should be entitled to monies. So that's a receivable. How do we track that? What is the amount of our unencumbered capital improvements? I mean, how are we paying for it? A lot of times we hear the word surplus. Surplus is used in 2 different contexts for municipal finance. One is based on an income approach and how much money you generate. And the other is your balance sheet. And I think we need to understand what we do on the balance sheet and how much money we have.
Thank you, Mr. Feld.
Wait, I just want to, there's no limitation. This is a public hearing on a budget. You have time to speak. There's no 3-minute limitation on a public hearing because there's a different statute. The Open Public Meetings Act does not apply to a public hearing on
Mr.
budget.
Falcon, can we upheld the 3-minute time limit? Thank you, Mr. Feld. Mr. Feld, you are now disrupting the meeting, so please sit down. Thank you very much.
Would you please adopt a resolution that you
Mr.
make
Feld,
that limitation?
please sit down. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for the public hearing? I will now close.
One
Okay.
up there.
Oh, okay. All right.
Good evening. Carrie Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue in Short Hills. Municipal budget comments, 21-134. So the TC is going to vote on a budget when we're still pending Oprah request responses, which Mr. McDonald delayed receipt to responses with an extension date of May 14th, 2021. So how can stakeholders raise questions and concerns at this time? Apparently, there was a new executive director position to hire, and when questioned the SID board chair about the contract, the public was denied to see the contract prior to the approval vote. Had the SID board followed proper procedural order? Thank you.
Would anyone else like to make a comment for the public hearing of the municipal budget?
I'd just like to clarify what Mr. Falcon's referring to when he said that this is allowed to not be open-ended as a hearing on the budget. What is there a law that he's referring to? I think we're entitled to understand that because there's definitely a misunderstanding. That's not a sufficient or complete answer that I heard as a member of the public.
Mr. Falcon, would you like to address this right now?
My
understanding is
time
that
gets
the Open
deducted.
Public Meetings Act confers upon the governing body. What? No?
There's
Can't
no
hear me?
Pause,
mic, so it
no.
can't be recorded or heard.
Is that heard now?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, that's-
Thank you.
The Open Public Meetings Act confers upon all governing bodies in connection with their public meetings to regulate the time during which comments can be received during the course of hearings, as for example, on the hearing on an ordinance or any other kind of hearing. And that applies
So
this
we can have a
evening
time
too.
limit. All right, thank you very much. So that is your answer. Okay, Mr. Feld, please stop yelling out from the seats.
I will continue my questions. I would like to understand, I want to also make a comment to Mr. McDonald. You said that you received no emails or questions in that capacity, but I have to tell you, every time I email and ask for information, I don't get it. So to me, it seems only appropriate to come here to get the questions answered. When I file an Oprah request, when I ask questions that way, I have not received answers to anything. I still don't have the legal presentation from January, whatever, data that I asked for. So I'm just letting you know, that's why people don't perhaps email. As far as the order of the budget, I concur that it seems backward. If the SID budget is being funded by taxpayer monies that are in this municipal budget, that's coming after. So if you're voting on the municipal budget and it's contained, the SID monies are contained within that, why would that come afterward to be delineated and discussed? It makes no sense to me. I have to agree with the comments that have been made about that. And I'd also like to understand, in the past, the SID hearing was always held as a special meeting. The prior SID equivalents, I looked back and researched that a bit. It seems that this is, again, it's been pulled several times, but now it's in today as part of the hearings. But is this an attempt to rush something through that's not been done in keeping with New Jersey municipal statutes? I hope the township is not going to be putting all of us at risk without settling outstanding allegations before a judge about the SID. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nancy Stone, 10 Fielding Road. I think I'm going to change my occupation. I think I'm going to go to law school and be the township's municipal lawyer because it's a great gig. As for you, Sanjeev, I have to tell you, I find your attitude to be very, very disturbing. You give the impression, because you were an elected official by 50% of the population, you have an obligation to lead 100% of the population and not just 50%. So you made a very blanket statement in reference to the budget that you were very closely entwined with. And I think that's commendable because somebody, thank God, is paying attention to the numbers, because when Tara was on this side of the fence and she was criticizing the SID budget by DJ Piori when he presented it, and he was absolutely more embarrassed by you, Tara, that he was a total joke. He didn't know what he was talking about. He didn't present the numbers accurately, and more than 50% of the budget, the SID budget, was going for salaries. We just increased 20,000 to the SID director now to go to the salary, which is like outrageous, because that was the whole point of dissolving it, that the monies were going to administrative causes and not the merchants to help the community, which is what you keep talking about. The SID is not here to rent properties in Millburn. The SID budget should be used for the development of the downtown and to be used to benefit the merchants, which currently you have as well, given your 10% discount with your new fame thing going on in town this weekend to select vendors that chose to participate. So I have to tell you, there's a lot of contradictions here, but don't keep saying you're benefiting the business community by asking for a grant that we're going to be beholden to possibly in the future. So when you say that you can promise, Sanjeev, that taxes will not be raised under your watch, I'm going to hold you to that. I really hope that's the case, because the Board of Ed just raised our taxes because of the Upton properties and the 100 children that are going to be entering the school system. So that's an issue now being, well, that's what we heard last night. So that's not true, Maggie? Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it then, because I was under the impression when I spoke to Jamie Ceruto this afternoon that it is being increased by approximately $1 million. It's only a teeny weeny 1% increase that we're going to be looking forward to. That's what I have to say. And Alex is terrific.
We can agree on that.
Amongst other things.
Now, I will now close the public hearing. Okay. May I have a motion to approve
Can I
resolution
make some
21?
comment, Mayor?
You would like to make a comment?
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to bring up two things in here. One is note versus bond. Thankfully, Millburn Township doesn't have any long-term debt, which is really considered when it's over 10 years. And if I'm wrong, just correct me, Mr. Gablo. Short-term, we are not just paying the interest and moving it around. We are paying principal and interest, and within 10 years or before that, you're going to pay that off. That's why it's called notes. And we are paying principal and interest with it. I've gone to different township and I've actually looked at a lot of other township budgets. And when I say lots, I really mean it. Just to drill that user-friendly budget, regular budget, number of people working, fire department volunteer versus paid fire department. I have done 3 months rigorous, as much as I could. Again, I'm only capable of so much. But I have done my due diligence. And again, there's always room for improvement. I'm not doing the best that I could, or I am trying to do my best, right? So that is that, short-term versus long-term, notes versus bond. We don't have it, thankfully. Other township has it. They generally increase taxes based on what interest they're paying. Thankfully, we are not doing that. Surplus, there's things that came in as surplus saying, surplus is not truly a surplus. It's a cash flow that we are passing it from this year into the next year. It's an accounting terminology that these guys are using or state has used as surplus, but it's the cash flow, operating cash flow that is going from one year to the other. And lastly, I have never promised, and I will not promise that I will not increase taxes under my watch. All I'm saying is, whatever it is, I'm going to do my best because I'm equally a taxpayer. So when money comes out of taxpayers' pocket, it is coming out of my pocket as well. So with that, there's a 2% cap that everyone puts in: school board, county board, and municipal board. We 5 year only support municipal or can only handle municipal. We are responsible for that. What school board does or what county does is out of our control. You have to go to school board of ed and you have to go to the county freeholders, or now they're called commissioners. So thank you.
May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-135, which authorizes adoption of the 2021 budget?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
The 2020-21 Millburn Short Hills Business Organization budget was introduced by the Township Committee on April 6, 2021 meeting. May I have a motion to approve resolution 21-136, which authorizes this township to read the 2021 Short Hills Business Organization budget by title?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
I will now refer to Michael Parlavecchio and Stephen Weiner for any final comments on the 2021 Millburn Short Hills Business Organization budget. Yeah, I think I saw Stephen or Julie.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the committee. It's Michael Parlavecchio. I just have brief comments. I was able to address you and members of the public on first reading of this, of the SID budget. We've talked a lot about it, and Stephen Weiner went into some more granular detail about the dollars and cents of the budget. You did have an opportunity to meet the board's new executive director. And I think he's really committed on helping us continue and advance our progress, to recruit new businesses, to apply for grants, and to advocate for businesses across all 5 districts based on all the needs. And just a reminder, we're focused on all 5 commercial districts, not just the downtown. So it's a bit larger scope than it was in the past. And we're very excited about our event coming up this Saturday.
Yeah, Michael, thank you. This is good evening, everybody. It's Stephen Weiner, otherwise known as, I guess, Splurge Bakery on my sign. So I apologize for that. But we did go through all the details of the proposed budget at our last meeting. I'm happy to just remind everybody that we're looking at a $204,000 annual budget for 2021. We did have about $11,800 rollover from the prior year, or unexpended funds. So our total budget, proposed budget, is $215,839.43. We did have a cleanup item. We removed reference to farmers market from the last draft. So what's been posted is the actual final proposed budget. I can address the fact that we have staffing. We have 2 line items in there for staffing. Super excited to have Steve Grillo on board, and he started May 1. And we expect great things. I've already had ran down to town hall to meet him on his first day, and just super excited for all of his ideas and our ability to implement a lot of programming for the benefit of all businesses. And like Michael said, in all 5 districts. But from a budget perspective, you know, if you do the math, we pay Steve, as publicly posted, $8,750 per month for 8 months. It's $70,000. We have about a $5,200 gap, which we can easily fill from our various marketing line expenses. And as we move forward, we will certainly be discussing with the board of the SID and others, if anybody has questions about if and when we need to juggle those numbers a bit from the marketing consultant or marketing line items in the budget to cover Steve Grillo's expense. Going forward, I mean, this is our first year, so this was our best attempt at allocating our budget. And as we move forward, we certainly will be able to have a more precise line item breakout as the organization matures. So I'm not sure if anyone has any questions.
All right, I hear, well, does anyone on the committee have any questions?
So, see, I do have one question. Stephen, can you just elaborate, excuse me, can you just verify and elaborate that we are committed to staying within the bounds of our budget, that we have the capacity to do that with our line items?
Oh, absolutely. Thanks, Richard. I apologize if I went too fast over that, but right now that we kind of over allocated some of our marketing expenses, and as well as we have programming events that, to the extent there's marketing associated with each event or programming, there's plenty of budget available to cover those expenses. So we absolutely have no intent. We will stay within the total $215,000, $839 budget. And we will be able to provide a lot of programming and events totally within that stated budget. We have no intention at all to seek additional money to cover any additional expenses that we foresee at this time. Does that help, Richard?
Yeah, great. That's what I wanted to discuss, but thank you for addressing that.
Sure.
I hereby open the public hearing for any comments on the 2020-21 Millburn Short Hills Business Organization budget.
Again, my name is Jeffrey Feld. There's several questions I have. I have a copy of the budget that was published in the item. When the budget was introduced, the budget was based on the salary of the former SID executive director. A new SID executive director was hired after the introduction of the budget at a higher salary. At the meeting of the SID meeting, it was not on the agenda. It was a walk-on item. The public was not allowed to comment on that number. If today you know that the budget as to the line item is wrong. And if there's more than a 20% or 10% change, you have to renotice. That's budget law. And now we're saying to the public, well, we'll fix it at the end. If you know at the beginning that your budget is out of whack, the public, you should be adopting a budget that has the right line item, especially to an executive director. There's a serious question because the notice of his contract award has not been published, nor was the notice of contract award published for the new attorney. And there's serious questions as to the validity of the SID. There's never been a legal opinion, written legal opinion received by the TC nor the SID board as to the validity of this SID. There's several issues. One issue involves the expansion of the geographic footprint and whether you have buy-in from the new area and whether a feasibility study was done. The next issue is an appointed versus an elected board. Under the law, it has to be an elected board because people are going to be assessed. That's taxation without representation. That's a basic issue. You look at me like I'm crazy, but that's a basic issue. The other issue goes how you fund the SID the first 2 years. You're using taxpayer dollars, not a special assessment. And where regular taxpayers like me told that fact, no. A SID is you have a hybrid SID. No buy-in for the expanded area, being funded by taxpayers' dollars with an appointed board. These are serious issues. You do not listen to the clues of the judiciary and the executive branch. And there's also another issue. No court has ever ruled on whether the mayor has a disqualifying conflict of interest. I just warn you on that.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Nancy Stone. I'm going to introduce myself as the previous treasurer of the SID, of the DMDA. So Sanjeev, are we bothering you or are you reading something that's of interest to you?
Am I bothering you?
Yes, actually, because I find it disrespectful that you're not listening
I
to me.
find a lot of things disrespectful here. I don't say anything.
Well, then speak up. You have a choice
No,
to
I
speak
don't
up.
mean to, and I don't need to.
Okay, so, well then, I would like your attention because you
You have
are,
my attention, Ms. Stone.
well, that's great. So I'm speaking to you because you seem to be the numbers person on the board, paying attention to Alex's numbers. How can a budget get approved if we have not had it vetted properly with the extra 20,000 allotted for the director? How does a budget get approved with so much money going to administrative expenses and not to the merchants who you so wholeheartedly advocated for? I have a problem reconciling these two things. I strongly disapprove of the budget. I know it's going to be, well, I hope it's not going to be rubber stamped. Let's put it that way. I hope it's not going to be rubber stamped. I do not have much confidence that it's not going to be rubber stamped by all five of you. And I hope you have a good memory, Tara, for the way it used to be, that you remember what happened and don't repeat history. That's something, that's a definition of insanity. Doing the same thing and expecting a different result. We are like on DMDA overload here. Worse than we ever had it for the last 25 years. It is an embarrassment to the town. It's an embarrassment to the business community. And it's embarrassment for the last 12 months that we've been in front of all of you in reference to this matter. This budget should not be approved. It should be looked at, like Jeff said, with public elected officials. Taxation with representation. That's what this government should be, if you're going to do it at all.
Good evening, Nicholas Volpicelli, 18 Overlook Terrace. I just want to echo some of the comments made earlier. I do have great concerns about the way the SID was born. It was an opportunity to pull together the business community. If we'd done the feasibility study, pulled in all the various parts of town, we did expand the district that was covered from just downtown to several other business districts. I think it was a missed opportunity to reach out to these other business districts and get them on board. And I think we're dealing with this snowball of, animosity that could have been headed off if we just paused last summer, done the feasibility study and get unified. So it's not too late to still go back and get that unity, for what it's worth.
Anybody else? Thank you. Good evening. Perry Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue in Short Hills. Before voting on the 2021 SID budget, Resolution 21-36, 21-137, I asked the questions for the following. Why has the SID budget been delayed multiple times since March 2021? Should the mayor recuse herself from the SID budget for further official action regarding the SID until there has been a determination regarding the conflict of interest matter? Where's the opinion from the township attorney regarding the validity of the SID? The mayor was an advocate to dissolve the DMDA, so much so that there was complaints naming her with incident reports from the Millburn Police Department. Should she stand by her efforts in the success of the dissolution of the DMDA in 2018? And should be voting no to all SID agenda items since the introduction of this ordinance? Attorney Mr. Falcone, until he has provided a written opinion, until there's a court ruling of the conflict issues, you should abstain here and recuse yourself. Will mayor be paying for the SID assessment in 2022 at 358 Millburn Avenue? Should Committeewoman Miggins and Committeeman Vignac stand by their promise, which they pled in their public statement from September 4th, 2020, campaign promise, and vote no to use the taxpayers' money? Or will they vote yes and lie to their constituents? Our BA commented for the record that the use of taxpayers' money for the SID stated in the ordinance 256120. I asked how many of the TC members knew before this statement, and do you actually believe that any or every taxpayer reads each ordinance to know what they'll be paying for? That's what's lacking here, transparency. And when you have been elected, you have the obligation to let people know. Why hasn't it been listed on the facts, question, answer portion of your special improvement district page on the website? Committeewoman Eglo, where are you on the ordinance 256120, known as the SID? August 2020, you voted against the SID.
Are you staying consistent with your vote tonight against the SID budget? Mr. Wasserman, in your prepared statement from February 23rd, 2021 TC meeting, you stated that the township would be paying for half the executive director's salary. When did you tell the public? And where is the additional $20,000 in the budget? In closing, Mr. Wasserman, was once again another event downtown. You continually say, trust us, give us a chance. That's why you and the previous Mayor Lieberberg are members on the SID board to oversee. Trust us, you say? Do you still say that we should trust you and trust you with our taxpayers' money? Will you be paying for the SID assessment in 2022 at 75 Main Street? If you vote yes for the SID budget, shame on you. No fame here.
I will now close public hearing. Oh, okay.
Yes, hi, I have some additional questions. So given that the SID was necessary for the Main Street, New Jersey application, is there a possibility of hearing what the status of the Main Street, New Jersey application is before there's a vote taken on this tonight? Did Millburn respond to written filed Main Street, New Jersey objections? I know I filed one and I know several other members of the public have. So I'm just wondering if there was any response by Millburn to those objections. We certainly haven't heard, as far as I know, from the Main Street people. So I'd like to understand where that stands. What's the pending? We have some pending outstanding Oprah requests that are going to come after this date that should have and could have informed us as members of the public. There's a right to do that. I understand that, but I think it's kind of odd that the vote on the SID budget is today and we're not getting information related to the SID from our Oprah request until May 15th, I believe was the date we were given. What I'd like to understand is that did certain public officials deliberately deceive the public and the state by failing to disclose the increase in the new SID executive director salary? I know that was already mentioned, but I think it's pretty darn important. And we should have an answer on that before there's a vote taken. I'd also like to understand, when was the public notified that their monies were going to be used to fund the SID? I keep hearing that it was done or it was in the ordinance, but it wasn't publicly stated as far as I can remember. I sat at the first SID meeting and I asked that question of Mr. Parlavecchio after he gave his presentation. So he didn't actually present that. It was up to me to ask the question. So I feel that that has not been very directly stated and given an answer to the public why our monies from the township are being used to fund the SID that's benefiting, yes, indirectly the citizens, but directly the businesses. And that gets to the conflict of interest questions that we've had, et cetera. So we should get an answer to that, I think, before you vote. That I'd like to know whose approval signatures appeared on the SID's $50,000 requisition and purchase order. This happened, I believe, during earlier this year. And let's see. Who did the TC receive a written legal opinion or memo regarding the meaning of the phrase original jurisdiction that was contained in the local finance board ethics violation complaints? Thank you. Oh, no, I still have time, sorry. Why are certain, the streetscape improvements that are going to be maintained by Millburn Township shifted to the SID budget? It's like taking the money that's already in here, moving it to here when it's the same monies. It doesn't make any sense to me. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now close the public hearing. Are there any other comments or anyone want to make any comments?
A quick question for Mr. Falcon. Is it legal and appropriate to vote for this SID budget tonight? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I also want to make a couple comments. What I think we lose sight of the reason for the business improvement district. Millburn has a double-digit vacancy rate, and it's plagued our town. And I'm sure there are a number of reasons why this is the case. And many of our neighboring towns, like Summit, have very active SIDs, and their vacancy rates in many of our neighboring towns with SIDs had vacancy rates of 5%, 6%, maybe 7%. So, so the business improvement district is a tool that townships use effectively to support the businesses and to lower the vacancies. And also, Miss Stone, I just want to point out, Nancy, I don't want to be disrespectful, but, for the record, our treasurer and our chairperson made an appointment to meet with you to review the budget, to get your input. I mean, and
Don't be disrespectful.
no,
All
okay.
right, you guys you're
I
both
just wanted,
disrupting this
I just
meeting.
want, I just
This
wanted.
isn't a conversation, so let's.
Right, I just
thank
wanted
you.
to point out that we wanted to answer. Okay, I just wanted to point out that we've done outreach to anybody we've done outreach to people that have had asked questions. Also, in terms of our Main Street application, the Main Street application was done in a good heart to try to get grants for our township and technical assistance. And it really opens up the township to opportunities. This town has rarely gotten any grants, in most categories. So Ms. Pasternak asked, what our response was when Ms. Pasternak and Mr. Feld, wrote into Trenton to object to our application. What? I was disappointed because that money would go to help our town. Those grants and technical assistance go to help townships. They don't go anywhere else, but they're targeted for our township. So to object to that, I will just say that I was disappointed to see that, because we should start working together to try to help each other. And one other thing I want to bring up, when the SID was first started, or when we were first considering the SID, former Mayor Lieberberg and myself, we had, I believe at the time, we had at least 2 outreach sessions to merchants and to the public, and that's part of the public record. And we did outreach. So and you can look that up. So anyway, so I just wanted to give a little background. And one other thing, our volunteer board is excellent, and they're working so hard. If you look at the at social media, which we've rarely had in the past, you'll see that every day, there's social media supporting all of our business districts. This is something that we've really never had before. So the city is doing an excellent job, and I'm just sorry, and I'm only sorry that people that object don't try to help us with our mission. So that.
Okay. Oh, yes, okay.
Mr. Falcon, is it necessary to do a feasibility study in order for us to start a SID?
I'm not going to comment on that. It's an issue in the litigation which has been asserted by the plaintiff. We'll deal with that.
It's so that because we have litigation on that, we can't talk about that. Okay. And then when we're voting on the budget, and what we're doing is voting on the budget, even though we increase the salary of the gentleman, that shouldn't make a difference as long as the budget number doesn't change.
Well, otherwise the transfers can be made. You're going to stay within the total amount of the budget.
Yes.
Okay. So as long as we stay within the total amount of the budget, we can vote on that budget.
Or you could increase it later if some emergency circumstance came up, but yes, for now, that's the way it would work.
Okay. And sorry, I didn't realize, that's right. We have the litigation with the Enzos. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, may I have a motion to approve resolution 21-137, which authorizes adoption of the 2021 Millburn Short Hills Business Organization budget?
Motion.
May I have a second?
I second that.
May I have a roll call vote?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to present an ordinance entitled Ordinance 2575-21, ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 7 Traffic Section 725 Bus Stops of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Millburn. The purpose of this ordinance is to relocate the bus stop on Main Street near the southwest corner of Millburn Avenue to the northwest corner of Main Street and Taylor Street for improved safety to motorists, cyclists, and bus passengers while traveling in the township of Millburn. This would be accomplished by providing an improved location with ample space for ingress and egress of omnibus vehicles dropping off and picking up passengers. Relocation of the bus stop to this nearby location would also assist in preventing congestion of traffic at the corner of Millburn Avenue and Main Street, where the bus currently has difficulty completing pulling into the designated area, impeding the flow of traffic. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vinayak is scheduled for introduction of ordinance 2576-21.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2576-21. An ordinance of the Township of Millburn, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, authorizing the establishment of a governing energy aggregation program. Mr. McDonald, you want to briefly describe this one more time for the people who have not attended or have not seen the meeting from last time?
Sure. This ordinance is an enabling ordinance to allow the municipality to enter into some form of community energy aggregation with a group of municipalities. There's currently one going on in Essex between PSE&G customers. There's also one in Hunterdon with JCP&L customers. This ordinance allows for that energy aggregation, which is essentially community pricing for electrical supply. And in this case, municipalities can get a better rate for their community, as well as allowed to have a greener component or more green component to their energy supply. So for now, this ordinance is what helps sort of get the mechanism in place to be able to do that. On May 18th, someone from Hunterdon County Energy Aggregation will be coming before the Township Committee to present. But this is not enabling us to go into that group. It's just enabling us to be in a group.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Wasserman is scheduled for introduction of the ordinance 2577-21.
I'd like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance 2577-21, ordinance amending and supplementing the Township of Millburn Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. Alex, did you want to?
Yeah.
Take it from here?
Sure. I just want to first and foremost make the Township Committee and the public aware of some changes that were necessitated in this ordinance. And I'll explain those in detail. Jesse will bring those up on the computer screen so that all have the ability to follow along. So before, one of the things that the township is attempting to accomplish in these ordinances, and we've been down this road before, in terms of making changes to permitted uses, as well as the potential waiver of parking requirements in the central business district or B4 zone, and allowing restaurants to be a permitted use. This ordinance is pretty complex because what's happened in Millburn is that we are attempting in a best effort on the Township Committee to strike a balance between business advocacy and the support and protection of our residential communities. And there is a balance there, and I think that we've reached that in what we're putting forth. I will explain some of the changes that were made. Some of them are minor typographical changes, but one of them is a larger, more substantive change prior to its introduction that I think is important to the integrity of what we're trying to accomplish here. Under 606.6.1, neighborhood business B3. The current ordinance being introduced allows restaurants as a permitted use. It says that restaurants, fast food restaurants, retail food establishments, and eating and drinking places provided the closest part of any structure so used, exclusive of parking and loading areas, is not less than 125 feet from the nearest lot line of a single-family dwelling in a residential district, except that no such requirement shall apply where said lot line is separated by a street or railroad right-of-way. This is the same language that's being used in all business districts. However, in the B3 zone, additional language that states this section shall apply only to lots abutting on primary and secondary roadways as shown in the traffic circulation plan element of the master plan. Drive-up windows shall not be permitted, which is also included in all of the business districts. The reason that this language was included is that in the B3 zone, it previously specified under conditional uses that this section 606.6D shall apply to only to the lots abutting on primary and secondary roadways. It was sort of happened upon today that this was specifically put in there as a protection to any business district that does not find itself on a primary or secondary roadway. Therefore, in the conditional use under B3, it was meant to provide that any restaurant use in that particular zone that does not have a primary or secondary roadway, in this case, and for this time being, which means Chatham Road, would go before the zoning board. I think it's important that protection be placed also on the permitted use, so that that same protection that was afforded in the ordinance currently is there now. Now, I think the intent of the ordinance and the balance between resident and also commercial use, we did not intend to completely eliminate the protection put on the B3, which is what this ordinance would have done. And we wanted to be sure that was caught and revised prior to the introduction of the ordinance. However, the overall goal of this ordinance is, again, to achieve that balance between business advocacy, allowing businesses more additional permitted uses, allowing for the waiver of parking requirement in the B4, as well as allowing restaurants, which Millburn is lagging behind other communities. In Livingston, Cranford, Westfield, Summit, restaurants are permitted use in all of their business districts. Millburn, it is a conditional use currently everywhere, even in our central business district. So this ordinance maintains the 125 feet. It allows for a permitted use when it's outside of that 125 feet. If it's within that 125 feet and it meets all the conditions that have been put forth under the supplementary conditions, it will be permitted. If that use trips parking, in other words, a restaurant is attempting to go into a dry cleaner space and increases the parking requirement in the B3 or B2 zone, it will go before the planning board. If it cannot meet any of the conditions, one or any of the conditions, it will go before the zoning board. So it maintains that 125 feet protection, as well as allows for restaurants to be permitted use. Again, in the research that's been done around this ordinance, the vast majority of communities that you look at in their zoning code, they are allowing restaurants as a permitted use. in their business districts. And Millburn has, in this ordinance, struck a balance between business advocacy and resident protection. I would just like to further add one additional strike through under that same paragraph, 606.6.1 B, number 8, where it says this added section, it says this section 606.6D, 606.6D needs to be struck through. My apologies, but that was a typographical error. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee too.
Could you just specifically speak to, we did get a lot of concerned residents from, from the B3, from Short Hills Village, Chatham Road. Could you specifically speak to how this would affect that strip?
The way that it is written, because the B3 district includes Upper Millburn Avenue, parts of Morris Turnpike, as well as the ShopRite down here, as well as Chatham Road or the Short Hills Village. They're all the same business district.
Right.
In the previous ordinance, there was a written language that basically said this conditional use does not apply if it's not on a primary road or secondary road. Chatham Road is not considered one of those roads. So therefore, the conditional use didn't apply. Restaurants were not permitted.
So is that still the case
That is absolutely still the case now as it is written.
for that strip?
For that strip, it will, those restaurants will go before the zoning board.
So that doesn't
In the
change.
current ordinance, it treated it differently, right?
In
Than
this
the
in
other
this
B3 zones.
ordinance, that still applies. It's still
Correct.
conditional use.
Correct. Well, it's still, no, it's not permitted use.
It's
In other words, it would have to go before the zoning board.
So that didn't change.
Does not change as it is written now, as it is revised before the township committee tonight.
What's before us?
Yep.
So when Choo Pizza, which is now Brooklyn Pizza, they had to go in front of the zoning board, even though they were the same pizzeria, they were different owners. So Choo went to Brooklyn, so they had to go in front of the zoning board, is that correct?
I can't speak to what they've done, but what they will have to do is go to the zoning board.
They will have to go in front of it. So what we're really looking at then is Short Hills Village, almost.
The
like
5 or 6 retail spots that are up there.
and I happen, full disclosure, that's where my office is, right? So,
Mhm.
so that has to have, you're saying that's a carve out, that it's really,
It always was a carve out. I
It
just want to be,
always was a
I just
carve-out.
want to be clear.
and it's going to stay the same.
Correct.
So nothing's changing for Chatham Road,
Correct.
so I can feel comfortable.
Can't speak to that.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
The towns that you referenced,
Mhm.
Summit, Chatham, whatever you referenced, like Livingston,
Yep.
Cranford, do they have the 125-foot setback regulations?
No.
So are we the only town that has this? To your knowledge?
To my
Not to put
knowledge,
you under oath, yeah.
in the close proximity of the towns that I've researched, yes.
So this will be protective, but it will continue to be a roadblock.
In some cases, yes. I think what it does is, it's like, when you're attempting to open the gates to allow some of the water out, you're not letting the water rush out. You're just slowly, like, we are attempting to be open for business, provide some less barriers, a faster pathway, a less expensive pathway, and this ordinance accomplishes that. But yes, it will provide those protections that are necessary to those areas.
So I was quoted from one of the meetings that I said, and I will say this publicly, when you buy your home that abuts a commercial area, a railroad track, the post office, their trucks go out early in the morning, you take this into account when you buy your property. I understand that people want this protection. I still think it becomes a roadblock and an expense that will keep certain restaurants or foods, people from trying to come into town.
Mhm.
I hope one day it will be revisited. I understand its importance and its need now. Also, so all these things, you can't have drive-up windows. And let's suppose Haagen-Dazs, because there was a huge line in front of Haagen-Dazs the other night, Haagen-Dazs. They have a window. Could you have a walk-up window? And the reason I'm asking, because in essence, this is what we've been doing since the pandemic. We walk to Ling Ling or Miss Lynn's to get our food. We walk to the sushi place. We pick up our food at the door, the Thai restaurant. In essence, we are all having walk-up restaurants. So this, until and Vinny's, everywhere I go. So Is that something if Haagen-Dazs desired, could they change the window to a sliding walk-up window?
I think that would be something that they should receive guidance from the zoning officer on. However, there's nothing in my sense that prohibits it. What's prohibited in the zoning code is drive-through windows. And this is in every business zone that drive-through windows are not permitted.
Which is why Wendy's doesn't have one.
That is correct.
Okay, last question. The definition of fast food, the
Yes.
pizza, Oscars, all the takeout food, the Indian takeout, they're all in essence fast food, are they not?
That is correct.
No, that is correct. Yes,
Yes.
absolutely. So
So
when everyone panics at the definition of fast food, what we have in town are fast food restaurants.
correct.
Okay.
I will, sorry,
Please,
Committeewoman. So restaurant fast food is defined under 301.51 of the zoning code, an establishment whose principal business is the sale of pre-prepared or rapidly prepared food directly to the customer in a ready-to-consume state for consumption either within the restaurant building or off premises. Restaurant defined in the code, an establishment primarily serving food and drink for consumption at seating tables and counters on premises. Sales for off-site consumption are permitted if subordinate and incidental to the principal use. So fast food restaurants do encompass quite a bit of the uses that we have currently in our food use.
So I really wish people would not panic when they see the word fast food, because it's in essence what we are doing. And we are doing walk-up window service since this, terrible pandemic.
And can I just touch on one other point? Aren't we, Mr. McDonald, can you also touch on the commercial grade air filtration that was added to this ordinance to strengthen the town, the town ordinances regarding this?
Yes. I mean, there were several supplementary conditions under the conditional use when that is tripped by a particular property that were added to this code. In particular, that they must develop and the development shall comply with all the buffer requirements established in 609.3. But more so than that, under 3, commercial grade ill filtration odor reduction devices shall be employed to minimize odors from on-premises cooking and frying. Hoods shall be designed in accordance with the International Mechanical Code, Chapter 507, and shall be designed to capture and confine cooking vapors and residues through a filtering device.
So although we're lowering some of the barriers to entryway into the township, we're also strengthening, some of our requirements. That's the case?
That is correct. So in other words, an applicant would then have to prove to the township that they fulfilled these supplementary conditions so that they don't have to go before a board and spend money to explain that they've, are doing this.
So that's a really good thing.
Mhm.
So I'll just say my last remarks. Millburn must continue to adapt. Things are changing. Everyone complains that there are vacancies, there's not enough exciting things going on. If we don't adapt, the city is helping us. Zoning changing are helping us. We can't keep derailing moving forward. Okay.
I just want to be clear that if I vote on this tonight, it's not affecting anything on Chatham Road, so that I won't have to worry about.
That's correct.
That's correct. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
I moved that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading and that the town,
Just as just make sure that you state as amended.
Oh, okay. I move that this ordinance be taken up as amended and passed on first reading and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, June 1st, 2021.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Ms. Miggins,
Yes.
Ms. Eglo,
Yes.
Mr. Wasserman,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak,
Yes.
Mayor Prupus.
Yes.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to take 5 minutes. Everyone can use the restroom, stretch your legs, and then we'll come back. Oh, good, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's, but it's, doesn't affect, that's why. No, no,
That's
you-
exactly what I told you.
I'll keep saying it, you're still gonna, it's still a stumbling block that no other town is just successful.
get it.
has. Keep that in mind. No other town that is
Slowly,
successful.
slowly touch the monkey. It opens things up, you know?
Yes, that's how are you, Nicholas?
I'm all right.
Yeah?
All right, how about yourself?
No, but that doesn't sound very positive.
Still the shit, right?
Well, I took it off because we were all behind
You
closed
guys
doors.
probably
We
like
can.
shots.
Yes.
So you're allowed. I only had my first
Uh-huh.
because I didn't have any conditions that allowed me to go early, but
I,
I got my first, I got my second in a couple of weeks. I'll be good.
when, what kind did you get?
I got the Moderna.
I did too. I did too. Can I make
Did
you
you
laugh?
have any?
I did. I decided that's, but I just want to make, I'm gonna make you laugh. I'm in a deli, an Italian deli down in Spring Lake that we go to, and
Yeah.
you know, and a typical Italian deli, the Italian guys there, and all his friends were there, and this guy's just like, oh, so we're sitting talking about the shots. Did you get your shot? Yeah, I got mine. Yeah, 200. This guy was in the hospital or something. Which one did you get? The guy goes, the Italian one, Moderna.
That's really funny.
I thought, you know what?
My
That's
son's
funny.
not excited. Pfizer's about to be authorized for teenagers.
Oh,
He's like, I don't want to get shot.
But he'll be fine.
We're gonna take it down to 12. And it's good, you know, but I saw statistics that we're only like 50% for New Jersey.
Yeah.
At 1 and 30% for 2. It's sad, you know.
It's not good, right?
Anyway. That's a nice. Yeah. It's a things up while keeping some things.
I emailed you.
Right, yeah, thank you.
I'm sorry. I didn't hear you.
Right. That's exactly, that's the sense I live between Menzo's and Chatham House, right? Halfway between those, so like, I feel the pain of all those.
You may take one. I have two. I can appreciate that.
You know, I can say these are rural areas, because when people say B three, I don't know when you have a second.
Yes. I can appreciate that. But they did. Just wanted to check the numbers.
Yeah.
It's just 350.
And then I would love to, I love the fact that you guys actually, I'm sure I wouldn't be the only one that did it for me, but I'm glad that this one comes my foot. Right. So you guys He's a good A little bit of this, a little bit of Maggie's idea.
That's so when we get out of here, you're like, all right. No, you're wrong. Shares is coming. I know, really. You can come in and start singing.
Yeah, committee women make it soon.
There's nothing wrong. Good to see you.
Okay, let us all find our seats so we can resume the meeting, and we'll get going with old business. So flex parking removal update. Mr. McDonald, are you gonna,
I'm deferring to Mr. Mullen.
Mr. Moment, please, you're gonna share the
I'm
results
gonna
of
share
the
the
survey.
screen. So just to walk you through the survey. So this survey was conducted from over the last 2 weeks and closed over the weekend. Just to provide some,
Yeah, we just.
yeah, just
There
to
you go.
provide, good, okay. Just to provide some history, a survey was conducted in 2018 that centered on alternatives for the area known as flex to raise parking between Dunkin' Donuts and Haagen-Dazs and the intersection with Main Street on Millburn Avenue. This survey was guiding residents towards the final question about, whether people wanted to remove flex parking and if so, when. And so the first question broke down the respondent type. The overwhelming majority were residents. The first question asked, do you actively park your vehicle in flex parking spaces? A slight majority said yes, they do. And the second question asked, does flex parking deter you from visiting the downtown? 52% said no, it does not. 34% said yes, it does. And 13.7% were neutral. The third question asked, do you think there are benefits to flex parking? A majority said no, 56.8%. 27.2% said yes, and about 16% were neutral. And then the main question at the end, as part of any proposed construction, there would be a level of disruption to merchants and traffic and financial commitment on the part of the township. With this in mind, do you support the township removing flex parking? 42.1% wanted flex parking removed now. 19.5% were comfortable with removing it in the future, and 38.3% did not want it removed. And so the point of the first three questions was guiding people to this final question, and these are the results.
Does anybody have any questions on the committee for Mr. Molman at this point about the survey? Does anybody on the committee want to share their feelings at this point about the survey?
It looks like, sorry, ma'am.
Please.
Speak into the microphone.
Use your
Sorry.
microphone.
Am I reading it right? There is no sweeping majority on either side.
You are right. So, as of
Right.
now, yeah,
Yeah, okay.
it looks like if you were to lump in the future and now, you would have a pretty good majority, but that's for in the future. That's not for now. So to me, it seems that there's really no, we cannot move forward with taking out flex parking right now. I think that there is, reason enough to maybe do the survey again next year or the year after. And that's my personal feelings about it. But right now, I don't think that there's enough of a reason to take it out.
Okay, may I respectfully
Of
disagree.
course, of
Because if you
course.
put 42.1 and 19.5, you have 61.6 there to remove. Now, when you say in the future, that's August. People didn't know what really meant by the future. They don't understand the RFP, going out for bid, August is the future. By 56.8%, there are no benefits to raise parking. Coupling that with the survey of 3 years ago, which we discussed, there's very little reason or support to keep flex parking. What I'm saying is this is never going to be a perfect time, but it's certainly not something we should be keeping. We're going to be dealing with this. It's disruptive, it's unsightly, it's ineffectual, it's senseless. It's mocked. And I think that we're not using it as an intended. I don't think we're ever going to use it as an intended, because even during the street fair, the tents were bigger than the parking spots. So the tents were still hanging into the street. And when you have a street fair, you close the street. So when this whole thing was sold to us for street fairs and all these other reasons, it's not being used. It's never going to get cheaper to take it out. And I think we really need to take our positions. We are elected, right? We speak for the majority, but people who have not lived in town, who moved in the past few years, don't remember or would have no idea what Millburn looked like. And I think everyone has to agree, well, they don't really have to, but parking in front of the Millburn Deli or in front of Bagel Chateau or normal parking is much easier and makes much more sense, and it's cleaner. One of the biggest things I remember when I was eating at Salad House when this happened was first open, because we have no curb, the dirt comes right to where you're sitting. And it doesn't feel safe. The bollards, and I've said this since I was elected, why Tara, Richard, and I all got political. It's not safe. The bollards are not safety rated. They have damaged people's cars. People are walking in the middle of the concrete because they think they're on a sidewalk. I see absolutely no reason to keep this. And I think you can take a survey and you can use that any way you want. And I am seeing over 60% of the people want this out now or the future, and I'm making the future August. So I wish my township committee members would look at this as a service to the town. We made a huge, and I didn't vote for this. It was a huge mistake. I don't know if anyone agrees that this was a good idea after it got done, except Arterial, who got $1.2 million for their scheme. I spoke at a Rutgers symposium in front of like 1,000 people. And who was there? Arterial selling complete streets. And how they would sell it, they and all the architects and the planners and the streetscapers, they said, what you do is you go to your township committees and you sell it. And there's a lot of money out there to be made. There's money that towns will pay. There are grants. It's about money. Arterial walked away with a bloody fortune. The person who put this in, I can't remember his name, whatever the name of the company is, walked out with millions of dollars and left us with a mess, a complete disruptive mess. Now, when I was mayor and Jackie was deputy mayor, we had a bid, it all went out. We were this close to getting it removed. And then what happened? The one bid that came in less than our estimate, he left out one piece of paper. We were up here, I almost was in tears. Jackie and I were like, what? He didn't fill one sheet of his 15-page? It would have been gone. And then last year was the pandemic. There's never going to be a perfect time. And I am practically begging two of you, to come with me and say, let's put this out to bid. Let's make it go away. Let's make Millburn look normal. The CID's going to bring businesses in. We're doing so much. We want to make this town practical. We want to make it beautiful, but it's never going to be beautiful with that concrete parking. It's never. It's never. And I leave town hall and the first thing I see is an SUV in front of Dunkin' Donuts hanging over. It's what it is. It's terrible. So Richard and Tara, mayor and deputy mayor, you're here because we all got activated because of this issue. It is up to us I feel like I'm like on a bandstand. It is up to us to undo what we set out to do. You are working so hard. You have got so much happening in this town, great things. The park is like amazing. If that can be reconstructed to be more opening and provide more space, open space, but this has got to go. I mean, I'm selling, I'm pleading, I'm lobbying, and that's it.
So I stand corrected. What she just mentioned, Ms. Eglo.
Can you talk into the mic?
Ms. Eglo just mentioned that in the future, if you add that, she's right, 42 and 19%. Means they want to get this removed. Not altogether now, but in future. So there is definitely a discomfort or not happy feeling with that flex parking, whether we should do it now or do it next year. That is totally up to the committee, but I'm open right now, going either way, just to hear more. But you had made your statement, and I agree with the first part. The later part was more emotions and.
I am emotional
Yes,
about
yes,
it. I
yes.
am. I
And
admit
I just
it.
want to be making sure that I vote fairly and not just,
Yes. You
yeah.
could use some of my emotion.
yes, I do. I will.
Okay, thank
No
you,
problem.
Sanjeev.
I have a question about this. Because it's so disruptive to have the parking taken out, the flex parking. Should this be something that waits until we have a decision on whether or not we're going to do two-way traffic? Because would it not have to be taken out if we were to do two-way traffic on Millburn Avenue?
I don't know that I can answer that question right now because I think there's a lot still to be discussed when it comes to two-way traffic. So I don't know that I could tell you definitively one way or the other.
Okay, second question. If this were to come out, wouldn't we want to at the same time bury wires?
It's a completely different conversation to you. But I mean, again, that would be for, the committee. I don't know that particular part of the street is where you're going to put your wires anyway. If you're looking at the poles and the way that it's aligned and things like that, I don't know that you put the wires in the street. I think you put them, under your sidewalk. So I just, but again, that would be a completely different conversation and sort of adding to a project that you've already got a bid spec sort of out there.
I just feel like we're putting gray tape on things then. You're gray taping this, then you're gray taping that, and then you're gray taping that when you can do it all at one time. If you're going to disrupt people, do it all at one time. And
But that's not always the case. I mean, when we're talking about doing two-way traffic, we're also talking about doing it in sections so that it is not a huge disruption where everything gets done at once. So there's two sides to that. And so like, we don't want to just like, do everything all at, I don't want to do everything all at once and shut everything down. I don't think
No,
that's the way of doing
but
it.
I also don't want to keep revisiting things as well. We take this up and then we go back again to bury wires and then we go back again to.
But that could be a burying wires could be a whole undertaking on its own.
Right.
And
a
also
very expensive one from what I remember.
millions and millions. And you have to realize when you bury wires, you still have the transformers above ground. So, visually it's better on a few blocks, but it doesn't like say you're not going to have blackouts or windstorms. And as far as if it goes to two-way traffic, I think that's a really big conversation. And that is a big sell and that will be very expensive because making two-way traffic along Millburn Avenue is more than just changing paint.
Wait, but let's not
Yeah.
say it's a
No,
big expense because we don't know that yet.
Right, but
So
it's
let's
more than
not
paint.
Speculate on,
Yeah.
on what everything is.
Alex,
gonna cost.
can I?
So Mr. McDonald, sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. McDonald, what is your, you run the township. What is your opinion?
It's like, don't ask that. right?
This is-
This is our meeting.
You
Correct.
And in our meeting, I would want to actually have input from you as well.
I will say that the only thing that I will say, because I will not offer my opinion, this is your decision to make. But it does seem that the survey has a little bit of sensitivity in terms of the merchants in it, I think. Understanding right now that there's I think Committeewoman Eglo is correct that there is. And, you know, I've been here since it's been put in, so I've heard it as well. But I think there is a sensitivity at the timing with the merchants right now. However, that does not, you know, again, preclude the committee from doing it now or waiting till
When you
later.
say
It's not gonna.
sensitivity, I'm again going to be point blank. Is that they want it or they don't want it? Merchants.
I think no, all I'm saying is I think that the reason you don't see what you expected necessarily is because there's a sensitivity to what's going on
From the
it-
residents.
from the
They're
residents about the
concerned for
merchants.
Merchants not to have to like, because everyone just came through COVID and still going through COVID. It might be the people that say not now or in the future, maybe, and we don't know this, but maybe saying it because of COVID.
Okay.
So
Right.
maybe they'd be okay doing it in the future if COVID wasn't an issue and and the merchants weren't going through what they're going through right now.
And what?
That's also speculation because we don't know.
Sure, and what just Mayor said, and she's absolutely right. I wouldn't want to do any project in a big scope in one shot. I don't want to spend millions of dollars on a project. So if that is step-by-step process, does it make sense to do it now?
Well, Alex.
Committeewoman Eglin would say yes.
well,
For
let
August,
me ask-
August
let-
is
let
future
me-
now.
Let me ask a more, let me ask a more nuts and bolts question, Alex, which is, let's say, you know, if we went ahead with it, and right now we're in the beginning of May, and we want to do it, I agree that we probably want to do it, you know, at some time over the summer, you know, August, you know, probably, you know, at some point in August. I mean, it's really not, you know, I mean, could this be bid and planned and executed in a 90-day timeframe? And again, you know, one of the things I'm concerned about, you know, and this is something that I ran on, this is something that I campaigned on. So, you know, but again, I think there's a sensitivity to making sure that you can do it and you can do it right. But my question is, in a 90-day timeframe, you know, can this be done properly, you know, with proper supervision and there's and whatever we're digging up, you know, we have to make sure that we know what we're doing.
So from a
By the way, no pressure.
yeah. So from a timeline perspective, when it comes to, you know, putting a notice out the bid and how many days you have to have a bid out there and when you receive bids and when you have to award the bid, yes, you could do it within the 90 days. However, I think one of the things also to consider as you go out to bid is the timing of which you're going to do it or want to do it. So if you had an alternate in there, as well as the less options you give a contractor in terms of when to start a project can also influence the cost of the project.
Okay, well,
So-
I just, wait, one last thing.
Yeah.
Costs are always going to go up. It's not going to cost less money, whatever your future is. And as far as protecting the merchants, what's going to happen is what happened last year is, well, they just got over this construction. Well, they just got over COVID. There's always going to be the reason to be no. I believe we are the leaders of the community, and I believe that Tara, Rich, and I would not be here if for not our promise to undo some of the disruption from Complete Streets. And this is our chance to get rid of one of the pieces of it. We can't do the bump outs. We can't do all that now, but I believe it is our duty to get rid of, remove, however you want to put it, the raised parking.
So another thing is, I generally like to have a plan or strategize these projects. And I think if we are not going through any bond or debt, I'm fine with it. I mean, with the way I'm hearing, with the way thank you, Ms. Eglo, and thank you, Mayor, the way you have explained it, I think if we have to do it, whether today or future,
You'd rather do it now.
I would take a stab at it and do it in projects.
Okay, so we actually don't need to make this decision tonight, right, Alex? Don't we have, we do, we don't?
No, you
right?
do
We
not.
still have, we can make
No,
this
we're just
decision in
meeting,
2
right?
weeks and still make the timeline.
Correct.
So I'm gonna propose that we kind of table it for now unless anyone has any other
No, that's fine.
comments.
No,
And
fine.
we will talk about it again, and next meeting, we're gonna have to make a decision.
You are. Is there any, Mayor, is there any other, Alex, is there any other information, in other words, if we're gonna engage this for the next meeting, is there any other information in terms of like a plan of attack in terms of, do we have all the information that we need in terms of, I mean, I would certainly want a project manager, so we have somebody on the streets. I think we'd pay more, whatever it takes to make sure there's somebody supervising this work, so it's not on Alex's shoulders, that a professional's there every day, making sure that this is done properly. So I just want to say that if we do put this on the agenda for the next meeting, let's make sure we have all the information we need.
Do we have the bid specs ready to go?
They have not been revised. However, not much is changing in terms of the scope and the way that it would be done, and the alternate for nighttime work and things like that. So it can quickly be revised. You can also take a look at the previous version if it interests the committee.
So I think we should all look at that before the next meeting for sure. And then a project manager, is that separate from the bid or is that included?
It's generally separate from the bid, and it's usually about 10. They come in and usually around 10% of the bid price.
And generally, whatever project we do of this scale, we have a project manager, like the Slayton pump that we are doing, and
Correct.
the other one, we have a project manager in there too.
It is a wise thing to do, especially in a high impact area with lots of
So let's go through the
concern.
approximate cost as well, just internally, we don't.
Right, because we can't share it here. 'cause
So
it'll be-
because then
right,
the
'cause
quote
then-
will come to that amount anyways.
Right.
So I just want to say, when we did the triangle on Douglas Street, it was going to be bigger than what it was, and I will take some credit for having that shrunk. And we did, right? And we did have a project manager because there was such a debacle in the downtown. And that changed, that project went so smoothly, whatever they did, because first of all, it was shrunk, because they wanted to make it bigger. All the way to it's like, how's a fire truck gonna get out of the firehouse with what Arterial had planned? And that project manager, that project was so smooth and it was on time, did not go over budget, and it made a big, big difference. So yeah, we have to have a project manager.
Okay, so we're gonna think about it and talk about it, and we'll talk about it more in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay. The general code update, Alex, can you speak to that?
Yes, and I do apologize. I did want to have additional information to the township committee. However, we will have a draft of these ordinances to you in short order. Essentially, we've been tasked with 3 different types of ordinances here. One is to address noise, and these are again kind of going back to the restaurant and zoning code conversations. These were meant to address noise, rodents, and also how to deal with the business parking permits when there's a waiver of the parking requirement in the B4. So these ordinances, first and foremost, I'd like just so that it's known that in the health application for a restaurant, they must fill out that they have a rodent abatement plan and how often that they do that. Now, the question that, the ordinance that we would put forward is, how do we put teeth to that and give the ability to enforce when a restaurant does not keep up with their rodent abatement plan? The other ordinance would be to address outdoor seating and also noise from outdoor seating and from amplification or live music. I think it's important, as we continue to encourage restaurants and restaurant use, that we also make sure that they are being responsible and considerate of the community. So what we are looking at is a reasonable time that outdoor dining and any amplification, music, piping outside, or whatever it is, would be concluded. And at this point, that time would be 10 p.m. But I think that's something that the committee should discuss and what you think is reasonable. Again, that could be defined Monday through Thursday and then Friday through Sunday or whatever, But I think that's something that should be kind of further vetted and drilled down upon by the committee. The third ordinance is to address the parking requirements as well as registration of businesses. Currently, any business use that goes before the planning board, they are assigned a parking requirement. They're asked to buy 4 parking permits. However, they may have 2 parking spaces available to them and they only have 1 employee. Now they're buying 4 parking places. Anyway, it's a very arbitrary sort of, interesting process that has occurred in Millburn. And the only way that we have to enforce it is through a planning board resolution. Now, if there's a business that doesn't have a planning board resolution, it becomes very difficult for the municipality to go about enforcing it. So what we are developing is a registration process on an annual basis that would be of no cost or anything like that to the business, but they would be required to register with the municipality, provide some certification or evidence of their payroll so that we are making sure that they're purchasing the correct amount, the appropriate amount. They may say, hey, we have 4 part-time employees and we suggest to them, here's a great hand tag that you can pass among your employees instead of buying 4 different permits. And so it becomes a much sort of, again, more business friendly, more, interaction with our businesses, and gives us the ability to make sure that they're being appropriated the correct amount of parking permits, parking in the correct place, as well as registering with the town so that we have their contact information, make sure everything's copacetic, and we're checking in with them. So those are the 3 ordinances that we're looking at providing to the township committee on the general code side.
Great. And you think we'll see those before the next meeting, or?
Yes, Mayor.
Perfect. And then Committeewoman Miggins is going to talk about the Development Review Subcommittee.
I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Mayor. So we've been talking about this, and what I'd like to do is see if we could populate a working group to take a look at this development committee, go over their scopes and duties of what they would be. I think what I'd like to see in this group is somebody from zoning and shade tree, environmental, have an attorney, a planner, somebody from the planning board, HPC, our engineer, our zoning officer, and Committeewoman Eglo to help. So as we see that there are a lot of people that are looking to do business in our town, having just a place to go, an informal group of people, they could come to us. And so then what we had seen going on with the Woodland Road project wouldn't happen again. And so that's my whole goal. And so, Mr. Falcon, could you maybe go into a little more detail, you think, with the scope and the duties, and do we need a resolution, or?
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
So why an attorney to this group?
This is for the working group to develop the concept so that it's in a form that you can go ahead and create such a thing. I have envisioned, and we've discussed it a couple of times, that there needs to be a group of people such as the municipal engineer, the planning board attorney, the planner. Mr. Phillips is involved in a number of these kinds of committees in different municipalities. Come together, figure out what is it that you want to achieve through the introduction of this process. What would be the scope of their ability to review and make recommendations? Are you going to have a minor site plan committee included in that group, which some towns do? There'll be a duplication in a certain extent of the completeness checklist. As you know, from the planning board and the zoning board, an application can't come on unless the applicant has supplied all of the items that are in the checklist or received waivers. Well, in a number of communities, and including this one, that's done by a small group rather than the whole planning board getting involved in completeness. So that's what I've suggested. Pull together some people who are familiar with this, who do it in other places, together with your own zoning officer, and come up with an idea about how you want to do this. And then you would put a resolution for your consideration as a group to actually establish this review committee, and its responsibilities and the scope of what it does would have been worked out by this working group to be included in that resolution.
So overall, as a working group, the attorney will be there. And then after the working group is set, the resolution is set, then the attorney will be away from that group.
Well, that's what for this group to decide who's
Okay.
going to be
So I would actually
involved or
request
not.
two things in here. One is to actually get the quote on how much we will be charged, not just hourly unlimited amount. It will be, it cannot increase the scope or this much money to get this group in place. I'm just suggesting that.
Okay.
And then I would request not to have an attorney or any paid person on that group. Zoning officer is being paid a salary, that's a different thing. But as a service provider, because this is a prerequisite to the zoning board or the planning board, if there is, it's all volunteer group and it's all a set group, then it is best, it's in the best interest of the township and not just increasing scope and increasing burden or expenses to do or achieve some more thing in there.
Well, it gives the developer or the property owner an opportunity to come in with a concept.
Right.
But what I can tell you is, for example, in another community where I serve as the planning board attorney, the developer pays all of the charges associated with the work of this committee.
But even to the prerequisite,
Pardon me?
even to the prerequisite worker?
No. The people who charge professional fees, such as the attorney or the planner, or most communities, you have your own internal engineer. Many communities have a consulting engineer who does this work. An escrow fund is established by the developer, paid into the town, and the fees charged by those people to participate in the work of the Development Review Committee is paid by the developer.
But that again, to me, seems like a conflict of interest. If the developer is paying the attorney who's working with the group, indirectly, it makes me feel that developer is paying the attorney is suggesting the work group. Uh, Without attorney, it's all should be volunteer group, vetted out. Again, no disrespect to you or
No,
any
I
attorney.
understand.
I'm just saying, overall, we are trying to create a work group that will vouch for all the things happening, and they should be reviewing it themselves. And if they have questions, maybe they can reach out to attorney and pay. But I wouldn't have developer who is bringing the application and charge him, because then again, you're inclined towards the developer.
Well,
Not you are inclined towards the developer. I just feel that seems like a conflict of interest.
well, what I want to make clear to you is that the municipal land use law has been amended to provide for this very system. The attorney for for example, when I go to one of these committee meetings, I'm working for the town. I'm not working for the developer, but he's been made to post a sum of money, which is kept in an escrow fund. And the fees that are generated by virtue of the necessity to review his application, determine whether it's complete, talk about any other requirements, is paid to that escrow fund. I mean, it was intended to relieve the municipalities of the expense of reviewing these applications. And for example, when an applicant comes to the planning board or the Board of Adjustment, they have to post an escrow. The Board of Adjustment attorney gets paid out of that escrow for the cost of reviewing the application with the board. But that attorney is working for the board, not for the applicant.
So if I may, Sanjeev, it might, and Kit would say, could this in essence save money for the applicant because they're not coming like Woodmont has, not Woodmont, Woodland has come 8 times. I can't imagine what their attorney fees are for that. So in essence, it could maybe save them because if they're coming with a complete application on the back end, they're not going to be coming before us 2, 3, 4 multiple times.
But why
So-
can't the professional?
And it's up to them
owner-
also, wait, I'm sorry. It's also up to them. I had a long talk with Alex McDonald. They don't have to come to this TRC or whatever it's going to be called. They could choose just to do what they do now, is have the application deemed complete by the building department and just take their regular chance in front of the planning board. Or they can go with a little more security that this has been previewed, not only to be deemed complete, but to be deemed almost like really ready to go. Like that's the goal of this.
Now, again, this process seems like even further away from what my thought process on this was. if the builder can go directly to the planning board and
Mhm.
skip this,
Then you
I
can.
think we should make a process where they have to go through that group.
I don't know that you're able to.
Listen, the developers, I can tell you from, I've been representing this board that I'm talking about for 40 years. The developers love to come there because they want to run the plan by the group. Hey, you know what? That driveway really shouldn't be there. It's too close to the corner. You ought to move it down 50 feet. Oh, good idea. And they change their concept. Now, it's a concept, and under the law, nothing is binding on the board by virtue of what the review people have done. But it's a kind of a mutually beneficial process where the developers get to run their concept by the people who are going to be associated with the board in deciding the case. And the board gets to make what will hopefully be review committee, hopefully what will be useful suggestions. That's what this working group would have to scope out. What exactly is going to be done by the review committee and how?
Okay, so the work group, as we follow, we are going to make the resolution, but just from the beginning, when this work group is being formed, if we can have a quote from the attorney who's going to work on it to not, or get a quote and not exceed that, or this will need to come here for our approval to exceed that. So we manage this process better
From a budget point of view.
for a budget point of view.
Well, that could be done.
And I
Thank
just wanted to throw out that one of the, some of the advice we got from Perkins in the report was that we want to make sure that this working group, that the group that is formed is accessible time-wise, that it's not just, 8 in the morning, or, it has to be, the hours of whenever we're doing this have to be accessible.
Just so you know, I told you this, I think, I listened in on one of these groups in the township of Madison where they're putting up a mosque, and it was in the afternoon. It was in the afternoon and everybody was on the call, and just because it was Zoom, right? It's done quite nicely.
So when we go back to normalcy and we can start having, however many people are watching come to the meeting, will it still be appropriate to do a Zoom format for something like that if you can't get these people out of their office all at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday?
I don't know why it wouldn't.
Okay.
That's a new world we're not yet
Right.
at, but I think it's gotten to be very desirable to a lot of people to be able to have a Zoom platform. It's tough to look at plans on Zoom. I have to say that.
Except with the screen sharing, I have to
Yeah,
tell
the
you,
screen
that's
sharing,
kind of
but-
nice instead of, but
Yeah,
we'll
but
see how this,
that can be worked out.
right, we'll do some investigation.
Mr. Falcon, I have a question. If we'd had such a committee prior to Woodland coming to the planning board, because it was a builder's remedy lawsuit, would we have been able to have any input? Would such a committee have been able to have any input?
I'm not sure I have thought through how that would have interacted, because if you remember, the ordinance was so specific as to the design of that project. And there wasn't a whole lot of room to change the ordinance requirements. They do, I think they're in for a couple of minor variances. I'm not sure. I haven't followed all the details of what's happening there. But I'd have to think about what the role of such a development committee could be, because it's really
Well, hopefully
designed
won't be
to
in that
deal with a more
position though, yeah.
conceptual proposal that I'm just coming in and here's what I want to show you. Well, we knew the township did what they were going to come in with because they had to follow the ordinance.
Right, and hopefully we will never be in that position again.
Oh, whatever we're negotiating is through 2025. We need to redo it again.
Well, hopefully we won't be in that position again. So
Yes.
being sued. Okay, good. So you guys are gonna
Run with it.
populate that?
Yep.
All right, perfect. And we need to form a resolution then that gets formed by resolution, that subcommittee, or just gets?
No, this working group will just begin.
So you
working
guys
on
can-
this thing, Subject to the necessity.
Still working on it.
You guys can
We can
go,
start
get your groups together and go. I'm good with them
Yeah,
going.
I need to see the cost.
Right.
From the attorney, how many hours, tentative hours
Okay,
is going to be,
Budget.
so we know.
Okay.
we'll budget.
It's more of a checkpoint.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone have any other, does anybody have any old business?
You're not an attorney yet.
Does anybody have any items? Does anybody have any other items of old business? Okay, new business. Does anybody have any items? I would just like to talk, and you kind of just segued into it, just, I want to talk about coming back to regular meetings in person. And, school starting up again in the fall, everyone's gonna be back. I think it's really important for us to start moving in that direction. And come, August, definitely by September, I would like us to be back in the room. So, at that point, we would no longer have Zoom.
We'll still have recording.
We will, right, we
Yeah.
still have the recording, so people can still watch from YouTube, but it would not be interactive through Zoom.
Correct. You'd have
So-
that live stream.
Right.
Yep.
We would just have live stream like we did prior to COVID.
Correct.
Right. So, I don't know if anybody else has any feelings about that, but I feel really strongly about it.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I agree.
I would actually play it out and see how the New Jersey is going on, because in my country, in India, back in India, my country is US, but back in India, it was all fine, and then suddenly it went downhill. So
Right.
I think thought process wise, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Unless something
Of
else
course.
happens, yeah.
But that being said, I'm gonna put a plug for everyone to go get their vaccinations, please. So
I'm
if you hear
vaccinated
me,
already.
get your vaccinations if you haven't already been vaccinated, so that we can all.
I'm gonna say there was an amazing article in this Sunday's New York Times Magazine, and I shared the link on my Facebook page, how science has developed. We've doubled our lifespan, and it's really all because of science and vaccines. So I'm with you, Mayor. Get vaccinated. I'm double vaccinated. I've been able to go away a couple times. Like, what a relief. So, yeah, I'm definitely pro-vaccine.
And could I
I'll
just
share that,
say,
Joe.
before, I know we're getting towards the end of the meeting.
But we have public
Oh,
comment.
oh,
We are
oh,
not.
then
We're nowhere
well,
near the
okay,
end of the
all right,
meeting.
well,
The hands are up.
okay,
But do you want to go?
Well, no, I don't want to go.
Okay.
I'll wait.
All right, public comment? New business, old business is closed. When invited to speak, please come to the lectern and clearly state your name and address and speak loudly so that your comments may be understood by all and properly recorded. There was a properly noticed remote option for those who cannot attend the meetings in person. If you called in and would like to comment, please press 6 now. If you're attending by computer or electronic device, please click raise hand button. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. Whenever an audience or committee member reads from a prepared statement, please email a copy to the township clerk's office at townclerk@millburntwp.org. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there is 30 seconds remaining. This is a business meeting, and please do not address professionals or staff directly, and please direct all comments to me. Each individual will be given 1 opportunity to make their public comment. And I will now open the public comment period.
Again, my name is Jeffrey Feld. These are some suggestions. I support the technical review concept because I think you would have short-circuited a lot of the issues that we experienced on Woodland if certain people could have had more input about the design, the rooftop decks issue. I think that you could have short-circuited up front. You're talking about your general code update. You should add the state best practices inventory inclusionary housing ordinance. The reason I say that, based on the proposal that came from the state fair share housing, they said any settlement would require that type of ordinance. Let's just get the ball rolling. And I think that would resolve some of the issues that we might have with Annie says that's coming down the road. Before I was cut off about the budget part, you might want to, for transparency, mimic what Verona does as to disclosures, as to like a summary, as to the balance sheet and showing like the flow of cash. This is more transparency for the people to understand the budget process. Because remember, this budget process we're going through this year in all municipalities is a unique situation because of COVID-19. We were all doing this really the first time. We're trying to apply the rules to a situation that no one's ever before experienced. Keep your eye on certain things. This week in the New Jersey Law Journal, there was a big article talking about a Supreme Court case, talking about ministerial negligence in the Tort Claims Act. Just keep your eye on the ball at what the ruling is on that. In addition, there was a hearing at the state legislature about the Main Street, New Jersey program. Wasn't that favorable? One state senator started pointing out all the abuses of the program. So just don't think that this is manna from heaven. That's all I can say about that. Remember what was said during the reports. Let's focus what was said in the first half hour of this meeting. Someone disobeyed the law to open up a restaurant. Your shift insurer require you to adopt the Civil Rights Act policy.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
Good evening, Nicholas Bolpicelli, 18 Overlook Terrace. Thank you again for your service. I'm going to touch on a few topics across this evening. First, complete streets. Please just leave it alone. From my perspective, I think that's what a lot of people, when they're saying, you know, later, it's because it was very disruptive and we don't want to see more concrete broken up and disruption. I wholeheartedly agree with committee member Miggins. Let's know what we want to do with downtown circulation first and make this fit. Whatever you do with that corner, make it fit with the two-way traffic, whatever you come up with, make it fit with that. Take the time to make it fit. Second thing, thank you for hearing us on leaving the 125-foot setback and Chatham Road carve out. As a Glenwood resident who lives between those two areas, that means a lot. So thank you for listening to us. On a fair share housing, I would just ask you to keep your eyes or keep your minds open to the solution that we had advocated as part of the mix to convert existing housing to affordable. As part of the mix, all options on the table. There were some other very good ideas like senior housing, specialty housing, I think converting some apartments. So as you guys negotiate in confidentiality, just keep that in mind as a possibility. And then finally, as a former United States Navy nuclear engineer, I hear you talking about having green energy carve outs. I would like to advocate for what is the most economical and greenest source of energy in America. It also happens to be the #1 source in New Jersey. We have a competitive advantage in nuclear. We get half of our energy from nuclear. If you're going to advocate for green energy, advocate for nuclear. Solar makes no sense in New Jersey. We're one of the bottom 25% sunniest states, and yet we have more per capita solar than California, a sunny place. We're upside down on that. Off-wind energy or offshore wind, I'm sorry, makes sense. We have a windy coastline. We do not have a sunny place. Please do not advocate for solar. Do not. It makes no sense in New Jersey. Wind, yes. Hydro, yes. Nuclear, emphatically, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you all hear me? Oyewolabi, 46 Maple Street in Millburn. I'll first like to say that I'm no stranger to any one of you, and I have supported each and every one of you one way or the other during your campaign. Tara, my children come to your store all the time to buy juice all the time. I support your business. This is Millburn that I know and love. We can agree to disagree and still do the best for Millburn. Diane, I consider you a friend, but what you said earlier is what I would like to address. My years on the Board of Education, Diane, has nothing to do with my question tonight. And asking for clarity on something does not mean an accusation. All I needed was an explanation, which should be clearly explained to me. That's what we do on the Board of Education. Transparency is key here. I want to believe that we are all fighting for the same cause. I am a unifier. We are not enemies. Your residents are also not your enemies. I'm not your enemy. If you're all listening well, you will hear that the key word here is transparency. I had to jot all these things down after your comment, Diane. I mentioned earlier that I was shocked when I found out how much Mr. Falcon made over the last 7 years. The word was shocked. All I needed was for someone to clarify for me. I believe that that was a legitimate question. And before all of you can make claim of representing the entire interest of Millburn and its residents, you first have to not be a one-voice committee. Equity is obviously not here. And I would like to also share my big disappointment on you all, because you all have allowed yourself to be dismissive towards the very residents who have elected you. And for me to come here tonight and just ask my 3 basic questions, and for me to get that kind of answer is just very disappointing for me. Thank you.
Mr. Molman, would you go to the phone, please? Or the Zoom?
Hello, David Cosgrove. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
If I could, I know this violates the rule a little bit, but did Alex say that there's been changes to the zoning ordinance since the other day?
Yes.
Okay, good enough. So I'm going to reserve my comments then on that and to try to move things along. So the next comment I would have is there was some discussion about the technical review committee, which I do support and I applaud you. But I do think it's very important that there be somebody on that committee that represents the neighbors that are in the area that are going to be affected. Because I get worried when I hear the list of names and it's the same people, for instance, who gave us the Woodland project would be making the same decisions. I'm not saying that would happen. And I do think it's a good idea, but I think it's critical that there be someone representing the neighbors on that. The second thing I wanted to mention to the committee is that the township's immunity from builders remedy lawsuits expired Friday. Now, you were very lucky that the court signed an order at about 4:30 today reinstating that. But what I want to tell the committee and just ask you to be very careful on this, that was a risk that didn't need to be taken. You got lucky, or maybe you didn't get lucky and it was people were talking about it, but either way, you were standing on the edge of a cliff and it was very dangerous. And it's the second time that immunity has expired on you folks. So I would just ask you to be, maybe on top of your attorneys to make sure that that doesn't happen again. There was no reason it should have happened and no reason it had to happen. The other question I had was, we just recently learned about through one of the court filings that the Annie Says property is in play. And frankly, I thought there was an understanding that we were going to be told about projects as they popped up. So my question then is, other than Annie Says and Woodmont, are there other developers who have approached anyone in the town looking to develop other properties? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Cosgrove.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm speaking on behalf of Ann Andriagi with respect to the proposed changes to the B3 zone. As you know, this was last heard on August 11th. The Township Committee said they heard the residents and withdrew it. Again, the case law states the test to whether a zoning change in question is made with the purpose of establishing or furthering a comprehensive zoning scheme calculated to achieve the statutory objectives, or whether it's designed merely to relieve the lot of the burden of the restriction of the general regulations by reasons of conditions. Now, at the last meeting, the township attorney referred to the 2007 study that the township did as supporting the rewriting of this ordinance. However, the study specifically limited itself to downtown Millburn and maintaining Millburn's small town character, period. There was no mention of the B3 zone in that study. The adopted master plan reexamination in 2018 clearly stated again that the only downtown area in need of redevelopment was the downtown Millburn area, okay? Now, for rewriting an ordinance, this is called spot zoning, but let's go a little further here. Back in 2020, I served an Oprah request for all studies and documentation in support of rewriting the B3 zone ordinance. The only document produced was a memo to the business administrator from Phyllis Priest dated June 16th, 2020, saying he drafted the ordinance at Alex's request to write an ordinance that allowed fast food restaurants and eating and drinking establishments in the township's B2, B3, and B4 districts as permitted principal uses. You know, again, to change a zoning ordinance, you have to do studies. This is spot zoning, again, at its best. And I can only think that it's being done by a rogue business administrator who, for unknown reasons, is attempting to cover illegal activities that have been brought to his attention, as well as the township committee, on numerous occasions, period. The conditional zoning the conditional use application has allowed our zoning department, which has been fantastic, to make sure that businesses are complying and working well in the neighborhood business zone. That's why it was zoned neighborhood business. It wasn't zoned neighborhood, it wasn't zoned business highway. It's specifically the B3 zone really involves houses that have existed there for a long time, and they relied on that ordinance and bought their properties based on that ordinance. Now, by doing, the case law clearly states that it's zoning officials who determine whether or not a conditional use application is required. And that was conceded by your business administrator tonight. I don't know why it wasn't conceded when we had previously raised that issue, but ordinance changes require support and data. And unfortunately, I can't see.
Thank you. Your time limit was up. I gave you a 30-second warning.
Can you hear me?
We
Beatrix Shear? Yes, thank you. It's Beatrix Shear, 101 Oakview Terrace. Problematically, the developer of the Silverman Apartment Medical Complex on Chatham and Woodland Roads has made no plans for accommodating medical transport, moving, delivery, and other such vehicles in its garage. In fact, on page 2 of the July 13, 2020 Millburn Planning Board checklist for the complex, 2 boxes about loading areas both contain a question mark. In testimony at the planning board, the developer's engineer and traffic witness both discussed the possibility that a loading delivery area could be created by making a curb cut in the sidewalk on Woodland Road near the door to the residential portion of the Silverman project. And the Silverman engineer testified that ambulances would be allowed to park on Chatham Road near where it meets Woodland Road at the northeast corner of the Silverman site. No formal proposal for a curb cut was made, but Silverman's engineer suggested a 30-foot curb cut, and the traffic witness suggested a 40-foot curb cut. Some of the suggested curb cut would be on the surface of the developer's site, although most of it would be on township property. And ambulance parking on Chatham Road would be parking on a township street. I'm asking the township to clarify that those suggestions are not possible. There's currently no parking permitted on either Chatham or Woodland Road in front of the entire planned Woodland Chatham development, presumably because vehicles parked on those portions of Woodland and Chatham would obstruct visibility of drivers coming towards the Woodland Chatham intersection, and also would contribute to traffic congestion. Woodland Road in particular is a narrow street. The township has no obligation to allow its Woodland Road sidewalk to be used as a curb cut. And for a number of reasons, I asked the township to make clear that it will not consent.
For one thing, the spot zoning ordinance for the Chatham Woodland project at 606.4.1 C1 specifies off-street parking within the building. And it expressly prohibits surface parking once all the required development components of the Silverman complex are completed. When a vehicle stops and remains for some purpose on a curb cut, in a curb cut or on a street, it's surface parking. What's more, the curb cut is a terrible idea because it would exacerbate safety concerns for children as well as adults who walk or ride bikes on the sidewalks that run along the northern and western perimeter of Chatham, the Chatham Woodland site. Delivery people, those moving in or moving out of apartments, and medical transport attendants would be walking across the sidewalk perpendicular to the pedestrians and bikers and would be carrying or pushing things, and that would obstruct and distract some children and adults from paying attention to the dangers posed by cars going in and out of the Silverman garage entrances and exits on Woodland and Chatham Road. And in addition, as demonstrated by the negative reaction to many township residents to the complete streets parking.
So everyone, I'm gonna on the Zoom. Oh.
If you'd like, Mayor, I'll point out the 30 seconds.
That would be fabulous, but I'm also just gonna ask people that are making their comments at home, if you can just be, please be aware of the time as well, that we do 3 minutes and then 2:30, then there's a 30-second warning. So, and Mr. McDonald is going to call that out for us.
And maybe you could put your cell phone stopwatch on, because if when you're talking, maybe you don't hear, and if you could self-regulate and keep an eye on your time, it won't feel so awkward.
It's also, you could also check your settings on Zoom as well to make sure that you can also see the township's Zoom as well.
Okay, thank you. And just for anyone who's joining us that hasn't been joining us, we come back to questions answered at the end of public comment.
Good evening, Sarah Sherman, 42 Greenwood Drive. First, I'd like to thank you for what I thought was a very substantive discussion at this meeting tonight. I urge you to revisit the flex parking. I appreciate the way in which you discussed it. And also Ms. Miggins' Development Committee on Real Estate. I have a specific question. I think this goes to Mr. Vinayak because he raised the issue of lighting at the turf field. And one of my concerns is the parking lot at the turf field that has not yet appeared, shall we put it that way. There's a lot of parking in the library parking lot and in the adjacent parking lot for use of the reservation, which has gone up substantially during the pandemic. The library will be returning to normal hours gradually in the very near future. And there's a lot of competition for the parking lot at the library with activity on the field. So my question, I guess, for Mr. Vinayak is whether or not funding for a parking lot adjacent to the turf field might be considered, since they're looking for donations and all the money will not be coming from the township. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Deborah Nevis, 65 Knollwood. Thank you for maintaining the carve out on Chatham Road. I just wanted to speak briefly in response to the question about the Development Review Committee and the impact that it might have had on Woodland Road. And to remind everyone that before Woodland Road, the Silverman project became an ordinance, it was a concept. And it was a concept that was discussed for several years before it became an ordinance. Neighbors made every effort to weigh in on what was going to happen on that property. And I think had there been
a development review committee, the outcome of that property would be very different today. So I know Mr. Falcon wasn't sure because there was an ordinance what kind of impact the development review committee would have. But I want to just again remind you all that it would have had an impact because it wouldn't have been an ordinance yet. And I assume that developer would be coming when they were still in the concept phase prior to an ordinance being drawn up and voted on. So I'm very much in support of the Development Review Committee. And I agree with Mr. Cosgrove that having a representative from a neighborhood on the committee would go a long way in contributing to the input that the committee has, and also maybe mitigating some of the anger that you guys face from the neighbors when we feel that we're not being heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you. Perry Urso again. Appreciate everybody's time. I just wanted to ask, I know it's probably not a big deal for everybody, but I want to know when the TC is going to instruct the BA to restart the broadcasting of the recording of the following meetings. Township Committee, Planning Board, Zoning, and if not, the Board of Ed. Back on the local channel 36 or the Verizon channel. This was a practice for decades, and why is it stopped? Why have you taken such action for the removal of the local government programming called the G channel as stated on the municipal website? I'd just like to add, I said nothing disparaging. In fact, all the facts that I did speak about today are available to the public. Committeeman Wasserman, you want other districts to work with you? How? When all your events and attention's downtown. Number two, Committeewoman Miggins, how dare you falsely mention by naming our business in a lawsuit? An apology isn't enough. Number three, will Mayor at 358 Millburn Avenue, will Committeeman Wasserman at 75 Main Street, and Committeewoman Miggins at 36 Chatham Road be paying the SID assessment in 2022? Committeeman Vignac, you promised, you lied, your words. Come on, it's only $200,000. You're the money man, you're the numbers guy, you write the check. The township should be taking full responsibility for all of the vacancies. Prospective tenants do not want to pay the property tax and the assessments within negotiations. Landlords have expenses. However, the TC is appeasing particular property owners who storm your town hall and a realtor who wants to ruin the town. Shame on you. Thank you and have a nice evening.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. Michael Shepherd, 7 Canterbury Lane, Glenwood section of Short Hills. Appreciate the opportunity to provide comments on 2577-21 and the new conditional permitted uses being contemplated. I do think it's important to go on record that the plan to allow food and drink establishments within 125 feet of residential properties like mine will have some negative impacts on property values here, particularly in the Glenwood section. I think the effects will be particularly egregious along those streets that are adjacent to B3 and B2, notwithstanding the exception that was carved out. There are a lot of other properties, particularly along Meadowbrook, Claremont, Canterbury Lane, where my family lives, and the surrounding streets here in the Glenwood community. So I would really implore the committee to think through the impacts, particularly to the Glenwood section here, not just property values, but also
quality of life impacts for families like mine. I think one particular element that is concerning to me, if I'm reading the ordinance correctly, is the provision to allow brew pubs within certain zones, B2 specifically, which is, I think, that section of the Morris Turnpike that our property is adjacent to. So I think I'd pose that as a specific clarifying question. Does this change allow for pubs within that 125 feet? And I would, if it does, I would really ask this group to give consideration to that and the potential impacts here to an adjacent residential community with young children. So that's about all I have. I just want to implore again for the committee to really think through the impacts here to families and children that reside next to these sites. Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Good evening.
Hi, Marilee Reesbeck, 91 Whittingham Terrace. I'd like to go on record as being supportive of the SID. All of our neighboring towns around with successful downtowns do have SIDs. And anyone watching these meetings would think that everyone in town was against it based on the assertions of the same 5 or 6 people who dominate the public comment section. There are many residents who do support the SID. Regarding flex parking, the Township Committee elections for the last 4 to 5 years have been heavily influenced by this issue. Committee members Eglo twice in her running, Prupis, Wasserman, and former Mayor Lieberberg all campaigned heavily on this issue. And I suspect that the only reason it was not part of the platform for committee members Miggins and Vinayak was because of COVID and everyone being homebound last year. Please consider moving forward with removing this gross mistake over the summer. I'd also like to echo the earlier comments that Committeewoman Eglo made about attorney fees. I agree with her completely, and I think it's bizarre that this people that are complaining the loudest about attorney expenses are the very same people who are initiating numerous lawsuits and OPA requests, which require the town to spend money to defend against. Lastly, if Millburn Short Hills is the only town in the area that has an ordinance limiting food establishments within the 125-foot range, then I think this needs to be considered. Thank you for your service and for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Jay Morielli, 1 Claremont Drive in Short Hills. I'd like to start by thanking Mayor Prupis and prior to her, Mayor Lieberberg, for their attention on a matter that we and several of our neighbors had with a commercial property owner behind our property. But let me come back to that. With regard to the proposed code changes regarding the 125-foot setback, I'd like to express my opposition to these changes. And I'm happy that our Chatham Road neighbors down the road have gotten a carve out. I would like the committee to also consider a carve out for our area as well. The deck behind our house is 10 paces to the back wall of the Mavis tire plant. The side of our lot is adjacent to the AT&T lot. One of those, I believe, is B2. One of those is B3. The thought of having a restaurant exhaust literally in our backyard, putting out odors and grease is appalling to us. It worries us immensely. We eat on our deck. Our kids, when they were younger, played in our back door. If a restaurant were to go into either one of those locations, that would no longer be the case. I understand Mr. Wasserman's point about minimizing the odor. Think about that for a second. Minimizing the odors
that are coming into your backyard. Would you want that in your backyard? As coming back to the work that Mayors Lieberberg and Prupus did to help us, we had a landlord at the AT&T store whose fence had literally fallen down into our backyards. We had worked with the landlord for a number of months. We gave up on that. We went to Dave Cuomo. Dave is the code enforcement officer for Millburn. We worked with Dave for months. We eventually escalated this issue to Mayor Lieberberg.
30 seconds.
We then escalated it to Mayor Prupus. This was a multi-year effort. So I hear your points about there being ordinances, but ordinances need to be enforced. And any ordinance violation that we've dealt with, or the one we've dealt with, took over 2 years to resolve. For those reasons, I hope you'll reconsider your ordinance change. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Regina Truitt. I live at 385 Hartshorn Drive. Thanks so much for your service to our community. One of the things I've noticed with the Woodland Road development and similar developments recently have been sort of highlighting the deficiencies in our ordinances. And of concern to me are the fact that we don't yet have in Millburn Township ordinances to mandate bird-friendly construction materials for our new buildings. A lot of people think birds are lovely to look at, but they're also important to humans because of their cultural significance and because they control insect populations and help disperse seeds. And New York City recently adopted bird-friendly ordinance, and I hope that we'll consider one here in Millburn too, going forward for buildings in the future. I'd be happy to help with that, particularly with regards to windows, avoidance of reflective surfaces, and avoiding artificial light at night. Sometimes we can't imagine that things will be built, such as rooftop decks on top of buildings right next to our precious arboretum, because we can't imagine it would happen, but we see when it does, or when it's threatened to happen, that there is a deficiency in our ordinances. Secondly, I'd like to just briefly state that I would hope you consider extending the Zoom capacity for township committee meetings beyond August or September, even though we're moving forward. A lot of adults in our community remain unvaccinated, which is agonizing for a lot of us, but still remains the case. And our rates are still quite high of COVID. And I echo the mayor's comments that I hope people get vaccinated as soon as they possibly can. It works, and it helps us all to move forward and decreases rates of COVID. But until that happens, you may need to reserve and continue Zoom meetings for those with disabilities or who are immunosuppressed in our community. And I hope you'll allow Zoom at least for those individuals. I'm going to speak fast now. Next, I'd like to echo that I support the Developmental Review Committee that could have identified some of the issues and deficiencies and ordinances that we've already discussed regarding Woodland Road. Next, I support the SID. And lastly, I echo the sentiments about flex parking. I think it does discourage people from coming downtown. You have to get out of the car. Everyone has to help you park. I'm sure there's been some automobile damages. So I would encourage you as soon as fiscally feasible to remove that flex parking. I hope you understood me. I was talking very fast. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
We can't hear you.
We
Can
can.
you hear me? Carrie?
No.
No.
It's not. How about on yours?
Like, very faint.
Can you talk louder?
He hung up.
Maybe we should
can
try
always come
somebody
back
else
to
and then we can come back. Wait, oh.
Good evening, Dominique Urso, 514 Millburn Avenue. I just have a few very quick comments. First, I'd like to start off and say that I am 24 years old of age. If I cannot figure out, at my age, I should be more tech savvy than I am, I admit. Needless to say, if I can't figure out how to do a split screen and this and that, how does someone that maybe has 30 plus years living in this neighborhood, maybe in their 70s, know how to use a Zoom and alter their settings to see the time and split screen? We don't pay our taxpayers money for me to have to do a time swatch and then also have to worry about my Zoom talking. That's why we pay an admin that should be able, since they're the host, to split the screen of the Zoom for us so we could see the time clock. I will be looking out that you do this, please, for the next meeting. Thank you. My second comment, I would like to ask why my request for the third speed bump on Jarvis Lane has not been placed. I stated for a comment that Ms. Miggins said last meeting previously, stating that they believe that the third speed bump was not input because it's on private property. I can confirm to you that it is not private property. It is on public road, town road property. Like the other two speed bumps were input successfully. And if you take the time to go on that back parking lot street, there is an outlining of where the old speed bump was removed. It's on town road. Please put the last speed bump. I've been almost hit numerous times walking to my car and do not feel safe. So I'd appreciate if you could put that last speed bump in. Third and lastly, I find it very comical and irritating for me to hear the few and most loud typical suburban soccer moms to talk and say of support of a SID when you don't have so much at stake. And please don't open your mouth if you don't know all the true facts of why it's bad and why the few people are loud. Do your facts before you try to disparage anyone, and for the township committee to try to disparage the name of good people, good tax-paying people of this town for years. It's disgusting. Good night, and I'd like these few things corrected. Thank you.
Hi, Carrie Heller, 343 Millburn Avenue. Regarding flex parking, I'm a little surprised that we're having to have this discussion again tonight. Let's a quick review for levity. 2016 election, voted out of office the two gentlemen, mayor and deputy mayor, who put this project into effect. 2017, again, people were elected who didn't support at least the elevated portion of the concrete. 2018, again, another election. The elevated concrete was done by Arterial with their back to the buildings. Myself, Robert Schultz, the Talco family, we don't speak for the town, but we own pretty much 75% of the affected area. We speak for our tenants. The removal of the concrete, as Alex knows, Mayor knows, Richard knows, Diane very well said earlier, it can be done very quickly over 3 weeks, maybe 4. It can be done at night, it can be done on weekends. It won't affect the tenants greatly. The cost is de minimis, relatively speaking. Committeewoman Miggins, if we rip up the streets and do two-way traffic, the amount of money and time at the intersections of Essex and Millburn Avenue is going to be enormous. It's years down the road before two-way traffic will ever happen, if it does happen. This is a small expense. It's an unsuccessful project. It's elevated concrete. It's dirty. It's unsafe in the winter. The rounded, mounded curb. The county plows the asphalt. We plow the concrete. The concrete is spalling, which means the salt is eating it away. We don't have a bike lane. It didn't do what we wanted it to do.
Tenants are not coming because of this. You can ask me, you can ask the large commercial real estate brokers who don't bring people to town. It's affected the valuations of properties downtown and ultimately taxes in the town. Values have gone down, not up over the last many, many years. We can do this and remove the bollards. We can do this to remove the unattractive elevated SUVs. The other irony of all this is the 23 parking spaces are parallel parking. Virtually no one parallel park.
Seconds.
Drive in, thank you. You drive in, you drive out. They're not used at a large percentage of the time. There are periods of time that they're well used, but it's if you can pull in and you can pull out. The irony is, the survey, Alex, we talked about this. It was a badly written survey. The 2018 survey was well done. Let's go with the facts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Good evening.
This is Fran Feld at 948 Ridgewood Road. I want to first say that I'm looking forward to the day that I can stand right in front of you, look you all in the eye on the committee, and thank you for the enormous amount of work you're doing for our town. Next, I want to commend Committeewoman Iglo for her heartfelt and very well articulated argument to take away the raised parking. Although I have to say that Mr. Heller just added a few more elements to it that make it even more urgent that we get this done. So the one thing that nobody has said yet about why flex parking is so bad. It was very clear to me from the very beginning, as a person who commuted for years and worked in the city, and then I worked in Newark, I met many people who were familiar with Millburn. And when they heard that I was from Millburn, they would say, "Oh, you're from Millburn. Oh, you go to the deli and this place and that place." Millburn had a great reputation that reflected on me. And as soon as that flex parking went in, if I tell you how many people in the workplace would come up to me and say, "Millburn, I'm never going to shop there again. What did they do to the streets? You can't park. You can't drive through there. It looks stupid and I'm not coming back." That's how it changed when you were out there in the hinterlands away from Millburn. So I am going to just add my voice again to the chorus to say, please, 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 for the sake of our merchants and all the work you're putting into this SID and all the money that's being spent, this needs to be done or you're not going to have a complete job done to help our merchants. And thank you very much.
Looks like we have one more on the phone or on the Zoom.
Hello?
Please unmute yourself. IVH.
Trying to get on his wife's phone.
Oh, maybe. All right. So, okay. Does anyone in the room want to make a comment?
Pasternak, 342 Hobart. I'll start with the more mundane things. In terms of the FAME event, I noticed that there's some nonprofits that were being represented. Does that mean any other group, like a Happy Millburn, I don't think is a nonprofit. It's a Facebook group. Does that mean other groups could be participating, or has that been asked to other groups that don't actually have a 501 designation? The other thing is the Memorial Day parade. How are participants able to apply to be part of that parade? What's the process to do that? And then I'd like to get to the flex parking survey. I happen to have a background in statistics and applied math. I just want you to know that this was not a statistically significant survey. So if you're depending on those statistics quote that you saw up there, they're just not scientific at all. So if you want to do that and use these surveys as a tool, do it properly and use a statistically, scientifically acceptable standard for conducting a survey, and also be able to do it with other things. Why just pick this? What about so many other topics? Like, why is this the only topic that gets surveyed? And then I wanted to mention the public too. If you got cut off, you could put your comments into writing and send them to Christine Gaddy, the town clerk, and you can also send them directly to the individual board members here. As far as the planning board meeting, I thought it was amazing what Joe Steinberg, who's been serving this community for decades, he said at the end of the meeting, I wouldn't vote for this project in a million years. I think that said a whole lot. I also want to say that the way the technology worked, having people having to be on camera to be able to give their comments and be sworn in was really problematic for our older people in the community. I think it's extremely discriminatory toward them, and I think that needs to be fixed immediately. I know the chairwoman tried to make it work, but it just wasn't done properly. And then I'd like to just address you individually. As far as the Bacone situation, to Mr. McDonald, are there other properties who may have slipped through these cracks of the entire process of approvals through the ZBA? Can I pay my taxes a year later and, just disregard the laws? I mean, I think there has to be some accounting for all these new things that came in last year to make sure that they were all done properly. I just don't have the trust anymore in that. And I'd like to say, as far as I want to talk to Mr. Wasserman. I mean, you are probably not aware, but there was that state hearing on Main Street, New Jersey. I think that's really important that you look at that before we be marching ahead. You said you did outreach on 2 sessions. How about a survey on the SID? You said you were disappointed. Let me disabuse you of your hurt feelings. This town does things legally. And until now, we lack the trust in your ability to act as a fiduciary of this town, our assets and goodwill. We are as dedicated to this town as any one of you. We give a darn about Millburn's reputation, and we have all given our treasured time and talent, each one of us, to our neighbors in various organizations and ways of volunteering. I don't appreciate being demeaned. I don't think our concerns should be waffled off or talked about like they mean nothing. And we genuinely have a worry, and we do want to come to solutions, and we would like to work with you. And I'd like to be treated the same way you do, Mr. Viniak, with other people that I've seen WhatsApp chats with. You give them great respect. We'd like to have the same. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Stone, 266 Essex Street, Nancy and David Fine Jules, because I'm talking more so as a business owner. On April 8th, I mean, I have a lot of comments, but I'm going to go by what I prepared because I want to get that out. On April 8th, I held in my hand 2 bank checks equally split according to resolution dissolving the original DMDA in December of 2018. One was for the Town Beautification League in the amount of $3,084.59, and that was handed to Robin Schoenberg, the president of the TBL and a neighbor of mine, the very next day. I delivered it to her personally. You busy, Maggie?
I'm
Oh.
writing notes.
What?
I write notes when you speak.
Oh, well, no, actually, you're very good at that, and I do appreciate that, so I apologize. The second check has been held in my office. You could write this note down because this is really important. For the current Millburn Chamber President, Ralph Chernowski, to pick up. I have requested Denny Klein, who is a board member, to kindly guide the board to use these proceeds for the chamber to make a donation in the same amount to the TBL, since they've been absent in the Millburn merchant community in the past year, using COVID as the reason. I was told by Denny that the chamber board would have to vote whether to give the check to the TBL, and he assured me that he did not see an objection to my request. Denny has since called me to advise that he brought my request to the board, and they're looking into it, and they would like to pick up the check in the meantime. I have no problem saying no. as I did when Alex graciously came to my office to pick up the 2 checks on the Thursday after the meeting. Unlike several of you who frivolously like to waste taxpayer dollars on needless legal matters and overpaying salaries to the tune of over 50% of the SID budget, which is exactly what Tara was outraged about when DJ Peory presented his last and final budget as the president, and David Sorkin took over to rebrand and remarket the SID. As his treasurer, we successfully lowered the expenses and put on many successful events like Millburn Live, which you are now emulating at an exorbitant expense level. What have you improved other than continuing to waste money? I am protecting this money until it gets into the right hand, the TBL, which was intended for the merchants of this town. And I will go down protecting that last $3,000 till the very last second. That's how I roll. I'm a woman of my word, and it's going to the right place. Wait 2 seconds. In closing, I look forward to the end as well. Today marks 181 days until you're out, Tara.
All right. Does anyone have any comments, questions?
Yes,
Yeah.
I have a couple of quick comments.
Sure.
I was on, and I've said this many times, you all know, I was on the first aid squad for 15 years. Ambulances park in the street. They park on Millburn Avenue in front of the post office. They park in front of apartment houses. And I had many calls at the Summit Medical Group on Chatham Road, right? Or was that Woodland?
Woodland and
This-
Chatham.
Yeah. It was a terrible place because the building was not really fitted inside. So I believe it was BB Shear, ambulances park in front of where we have to go to, I'm not on squad anymore, to pick up a very sick patient. And at many times at the Short Hills Mall, the officers in the background know, we block parking lots, we block driveways. That is what ambulances have to do. You don't need a cutout for an ambulance. The turf field, I believe in the original plan, Ms. McDonald, it was for the parking lot. I don't know if there was funds. Bird-friendly windows, I actually looked up what that is. Is that something that would come from the Environmental Commission to bring to us as a resolution? If that is something that would move forward? It's like dots on the window that does not block you from inside. So there are, I didn't even know what bird-friendly windows were. Did we get from, if we go out for a possible cell tower bid, did we get a CAD or a schematic? Because that's 300 square feet, which, I mean this with respect, is the size of some people's kitchens in Short Hills. It's not as big as a field. So it's not going to take up tremendous amount of room. And I will give my last plea. I want to thank whoever was calling that. I was very passionate about removing flex parking, and I will remain passionate until it is gone. And thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Stone, I just wanted to address you with the numbers for the Upton that you had received. So through the end of April, they had leased 85 of their apartments. And over 61% are over 55 of the people going into the Upton, believe it or not. And there's only 19 children there. So if you take the numbers, the way they took their numbers, exactly, they feel that probably by the time they're fully leased, they'll have maybe 43 children based on what these numbers are looking like today. So his numbers are incorrect. There are only 19 children in there. I appreciate that clarification. My pleasure. Mr. Falcon, this is a question for you. Do you need to do studies in order to change ordinances?
You should engage in a process of analysis before you adopt ordinances.
Okay.
Make sure they're feasible and make sense. Formal study is not always needed, but it was a process initiated, I think, by Ms. Burston, which you have been following, that an ordinance doesn't get adopted, it doesn't get introduced unless the prior meeting is vetted and discussed. And often leading up to that, you get the benefit of comments by the planner or whatever you need to do.
Okay, it's just one of the people had said that we needed to do studies
Mhm.
with the B3 district, so that's, and spot zoning and all that such, so when she was. Okay, that was my other question, thank you.
And we've done information sessions.
And we've done information sessions, yeah, I just wanted to be clear about that, that's all, thank you.
Questions, comments?
Well, for Mother's Day, as I said before, please shop and dine local this weekend. It's a wonderful, it's going to be a wonderful weekend. Please shop with our merchants, dine in our wonderful restaurants, and entertain mom locally.
This question is for Mr. Falcon. I'm not sure if you're aware of, or maybe you need to do some homework here. On the curb cut, is there a law that states after the build out is done that you cannot park on public roads?
I don't know the answer to that. I could look into it.
Mr. McDonald, do you know?
No, but what I'll say to what the individual asked is that nothing has been asked of the township at this point to allow, to change an ordinance to allow for parking or anything like that.
No, I'm just saying, maybe there's an existing law, because I think someone, again, I don't like to call out names, but there was a lady who
Mhm.
spoke, a woman who spoke, and she mentioned 606 something. So there is supposedly an ordinance
Oh.
that,
Okay, so you're asking us to look into the zoning code.
yes.
Yeah.
yes. Second is parking lot. There was a comment made. Turf club, rec commission is looking into lighting the turf club. And there was a concern about parking, that there is less of a parking. We should also look in parking. I am a liaison on the rec commission. I'm not a commissioner. I will take this to the rec commission and tell them or inform them. Better for you to even come to the rec commission meeting. It's at 7 p.m. on every second Wednesday of the month. It'll be even more or better if you speak to them directly. I will certainly bring this up to them as well. Then there's another comment that has been made like few times. Speed bump, 2-3 times had been made. This is a day-to-day thing. We have board of directors here. As much as we like to get into day-to-day, I don't think on this one we need to really get involved. Have you gone to office and spoken to someone there? And if you did, well, then you should get the answer right there. So again, as much as we like here, this is board of directors. Day-to-day issues should also get discussed with the customer service. Go to the office, talk to them, figure it out. Thank you.
Right.
Mayor, just one follow-up for me. The question about the Memorial Day Parade. Memorial Day Parade is usually a recognized organization within the township or by invite, based on being a recognized organization in the township. So just wanted to let everyone know that.
Thank you. Mr. Falcon, do you have anything to say? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Wait,
the meeting?
one quick question, and
Yes.
I did ask somebody up here, are we having 4th of July fireworks this year?
Yes.
Amazing, really? 4th of July at the high
Only
school?
fireworks.
Amazing.
Yep. All right.
Very happy
Motion
about
to
that.
adjourn.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Millburn Township.